Events begin to take place not far from the huge penthouse, namely in the city of Shenzhou. The main character's name is Lin Fan, and he is a student at Shenzhou University. Since his father died, he switched to distance learning, and now works with his uncle and studies. This guy will graduate from university soon, but it's still unclear why he looks like a complete loser. As it turned out, after the system saved his life once, he found himself in a big and long trouble. The owner of the store where everything happened was a friend of his father, so he allows him to live here in the store, which is why the young man could save quite well on rent. Lying on his bed, the guy only thought that what happens only in comics actually happened to him. Despite the fact that the system looks rather strange, its capabilities were amazing, it actually saved him. The first skill learned in the system was massage, and it seemed like the stars and next to it meant the level of the skill, and the question marks hinted that he could gain other talents in the future. Still, the guy really didn't understand how to use the system that he happened to have. After some thought, Lin Fan even began to think that perhaps the system was designed to become a superhero. Or this system will help him bring the world to its knees and become a demon king who will be stronger than any ordinary person. Suddenly, the guy received a new message on his phone, in which the girl dumped him, saying that she had cheated on him and wanted to date a completely different guy. From this turn of events, Lin was literally disappointed in the girls, and understood that he needed to concentrate on self-development and earn as much money as possible. That is why the guy decided to engage in an activity that brought enormous pleasure to the girls. This activity was a massage, which the young man did quite professionally, and he did well, which is why clients began to come to him. The main character could literally guarantee the pleasure of a massage for his clients, because thanks to the system it was very easy to master this skill. Suddenly, Lin Fan began to scream at the top of his lungs in pain, as it seemed to him that an electric shock had occurred directly to his body. After such serious damage to his entire body, the main character still wanted to understand what was wrong, and asked the system about it. As it turns out, it was the system that recreated the electric shock, because the system should be used to develop talent, not to court girls. Hearing this, the young man was simply furious, and shouted that he was not courting girls, but was simply using his skills in the professional field. The system could observe the protagonist's heart rate, and noticed that it was quite rapid, but Lin only replied that he was just training, which is why the heartbeat became much faster. Due to the fact that the gift of the system was also a curse, the guy did not understand what to do next, and decided to somehow relax. Sitting at the computer, the young man felt quite terrible, and he needed to relieve the tension at least a little. The only way to do this was always a win-win option, because only in this way was it possible to get at least a little pleasure. Lin Fan enjoyed spending time in this way very much, and he literally could not stop, and even blushed a little from embarrassment. As it turned out, this activity was called computer games. The young man happily loved to play various games on his computer. Holding a joystick with a steering wheel in his hands, as if from an airplane, the guy happily continued to play the game where he had to control the airplane. Thus, Lin Fan literally imagined that he was a pilot of a combat aircraft and was fighting opponents in real life. But in fact, outside of work, the hero understood that he was not particularly capable of anything more, besides giving massages to beautiful girls. The next day, Lin felt simply terrible, because he had been playing computer games all night. Arriving at the store, a business owner named Li Shu Yusen saw the main character and immediately began to cry, because he noticed how tortured the guy was, as if he was a diligent student and studied all night. Although last night the guy was just collecting points to improve the system, and at the moment he had 1,343 points. Since he wasn't very good with massage, he wanted to acquire a new skill in order to try it out. As soon as the hero pressed the button to acquire the skill, an unusual sight immediately opened before him. As soon as the portal was created, a plate of food immediately appeared from it, which was strange for the system, because there had been no such rewards before. This turn of events literally made the hero nervous, because now he realized that by spending his points, which he had saved so diligently, he managed to win a plate of noodles. Because of this, the young man simply flew into a rage. He understood that this system was idiotic, but he wanted to get some more bonuses, which is why he began to spend his points on buying them. Trembling with anger, Lin Fan still decided to ask the system what is the probability of winning a more serious reward. The system only responded that the guy always has the same chance of receiving any of the prizes. It was surprising, because he had just spent 1,200 points, and the system did not even try to stop him. It even seemed that this guy was lucky as a drowned man. He had 100 points left, and he would be able to spin the roulette again, because suddenly he would get lucky and get something more useful. Starting to cry, the guy only thought that the system was really stupid, but still he wanted to try his luck again. Thanks to the fact that the guy used his last attempt to spin the wheel of fortune, he was rewarded with a new skill, which he clearly did not expect to see as a reward. As soon as the new skill was acquired, someone immediately shouted Lin Fan's name. Visitors to the fast food restaurant were shocked by this behavior, because some person really shouted the name of the main character very loudly. It turned out that it was some kind of scoundrel who was also drunk, and he started dating Lin's ex-girlfriend. This stranger was called by Xiao Chao. He was the heir of the prestigious Xiao family, and also studied at Shenzhou University. The arrogant guy was not even going to eat at a fast food restaurant, because he only eats in elite establishments. With all his might, the insolent shouted out the young man's name again and said that he was a loser. Today, the young master was going to teach Lin Fan a life lesson so that he would understand his place in this world. For Xiao Chao, the guy was just a beggar who was forgetting where he belonged, and each of them understood that as soon as they both graduated from university, only one of them would be able to buy themselves a normal home. Moreover, Xiao realized that the main character would not even be able to buy a street toilet for himself, and he also decided to remind him that the girl left him for a reason, but because he was just trash. The guy even decided to remember that Lin Fan had previously told his girlfriend that Xiao Chao had a bad reputation and that it was better to stay away from him. All this was very funny for the scoundrel, because he thought that the guy just wanted to take revenge on him, but it was very difficult for such a rogue to do this, because he couldn't even afford to buy a house. The impudent man continued to smile sarcastically and said that he would still share some hidden secret that he managed to sleep with Lin Fan's ex-girlfriend just yesterday, although they had previously dated for quite a long time. All this time, Lin Fan was filming Xiao Chao, because he wanted to record what this scoundrel said during the dialogue. Thus, the young man filmed a video and was going to post it on the internet, because his interlocutor just loved to brag, and now he can become a YouTube star. As it turned out, thanks to the fact that someone is angry with the main character, he receives skill level points in the system, and only thanks to this he can become stronger. For such actions on the part of the young man, Xiao Chao was even going to finish him off, because he understood that it was really not so easy to remove such incriminating evidence from the internet. Suddenly, Xiao flew several tens of meters to the side and crashed straight into his own car. It turned out that it was the main character who struck this bastard, and thus taught him a lesson, because the new skill allowed him to have infinite power. Watching everything that was happening, the girl was simply furious, and believed that Lin Fan was really mentally ill, but the hero only said that Xiao Chao was the first to start this conflict. The ex-girlfriend continued to say that Lin Fan was simply not capable of giving her what she deserved, which is why she asked him not to interfere with her happiness. Based on this phrase, the young man immediately realized that his ex-girlfriend was dating Xiao Chao only for money, and turned a blind eye to the fact that her new boyfriend was a scoundrel. The lady began to argue, because in her opinion Xiao Chao was not a scoundrel, because he is a relative of the richest family in Shenzhou, they can buy her as many houses and diamonds as she wants. Thus, the girl tried to convey to her ex-boyfriend that in their time money gives much more than love. That is why she decided to leave Lin Fan, and also ordered him to never write on social networks again and generally literally forget her as his partner. Strangers standing not far from the young man began to discuss that the Xiao family were untouchable, and no one dared to go against them, saying that the guy who hit him last time was still in a hospital bed. Even the store owner approached the guy and said that they needed to approach Xiao Chao and beg for forgiveness so that there would be no consequences. Realizing that he did not need it, the young man began to leave, and only thanked Li Shu Yusen for his concern. Turning around one last time, Lin Fan decided to remind the store owner that this was his problem, and that is why he would deal with it himself. For a man, this was indeed a shocking statement, but in this way he saw that the young man had become a real man. Meanwhile, on the street, all the passers-by were trying to understand what happened to Xiao Chao. After all, no one could understand who could hit such a rich guy so hard. The scoundrel nevertheless decided to take revenge on his offender, and ordered his bodyguard to attack and punish Lin Fan properly. Grabbing a broom for cleaning, the man shouted that no one would dare beat his friend's son. He was going to protect Lin Fan to the last. Fortunately, having the system's abilities, the main character could protect himself, which is why he began to fight with professional fighters. During the battle, the young man did not feel any difficulties fighting several opponents at the same time. This turn of events was truly shocking for Xiao Chao, because he had never seen such a thing before, that some scoundrel could defeat several of his bodyguards. The result of the battle was simply shocking. No one could believe that the ordinary guy defeated such strong opponents. Watching everything that happened, Li Shu Yusen was also shocked by what he saw, because he did not expect that Lin was so strong. Suddenly, one of the visitors exclaimed that the main character was really not a mistake and he fought professionally. An elderly man with blonde hair and a beard decided to find out if Lin Fan had a mentor. This man was Old Master Zhao, who admired the protagonist's skills. Continuing the battle and preparing for a new attack, the young man all the time only thought that the new skill in his system was indeed very useful. As it turned out, it was a boxing skill that was upgraded to literally 1 star. Suddenly, some girls started approaching the guy and said that it was really impressive that he was able to single-handedly defeat 2 martial artists from their Taekwondo society. Seeing this girl, Lin Fan was simply shocked, because he could not even imagine that she would also be here. In fact, this girl's name was Xiao Mei Mei. She was a third-year student at Shenzhou University, and also the president of the Taekwondo club, which is why she wanted to understand what the hero was capable of and decided to play with him. This girl was also the sister of Xiao Chao, who ordered her little sister to punish Lin Fan and finish the battle that had started. Such orders were unacceptable for the girl, and she kicked her brother in the face with all her might to subdue him. Meanwhile, the system decided to warn the hero that a serious opponent had been spotted. Lin Fan still decided to say that he only wanted to teach Xiao Chao a lesson, but his relatives had nothing to do with it. In her first year at university, this girl took second place in the national Taekwondo competition, and she has a black belt, and is currently the champion of Shenzhou University in her weight category. Despite the words of the protagonist, Xiao Mei Mei began to run towards Fan at incredible speed. Such skills for a guy were really impressive, because he had never seen a lady run at such speed before. As soon as Xiao Mei Mei approached her target, she immediately kicked the young man on the head with all her strength, but fortunately he was able to block the blow in time. After approaching for the battle, many blows from the girl immediately followed, and Lin tried with all his might to block them. The fight continued, and the guy all this time was just thinking about whether Mei Mei really is a girl. After a long fight, the young man relaxed a little, and the opponent decided to take advantage of this, which is why he began to deliver his signature blow. Thanks to the incredible speed and force of the blow, Xiao Mei Mei really surprised her opponent, because the guy could not believe that the female gender was even capable of something like that. Fortunately, he still managed to block another serious blow, but because of it, the hero literally began to slide along the asphalt. Seeing something like this, Xiao Mei Mei was shocked because not everyone could block her strongest attack, which made her want to know if her opponent was involved in any kind of sport. The slightly frightened young man at that time only thought that he was really lucky, because he blocked the blow in time. After warming up during another pause, Xiao Mei Mei exclaimed that she would no longer give in and fight with full strength. Watching the girl, Lin Fan literally fell in love with her, because he thought that she really looked very attractive. At the same time, the opponent decided to take off her shoes in order to continue the fight without her. Taking off her shoes, the little sister decided to throw them on the floor to show her superiority during the fight. These shoes turned out to be really very heavy, because after they fell on the asphalt, they literally began to destroy it under their weight. What he saw made Lin Fan even more nervous, because he could not even imagine that his opponent would succumb so much, limiting himself to such heavy shoes. Li Shu Yusen was also shocked by this turn of events, and only the great master continued to watch everything that was happening to understand who would be stronger. Thus, the young man still realized that his opponent had been jumping around in heavy boots all this time, and as it turned out, she was truly a first-class martial artist. Before the attack, the girl began to warm up and exclaimed that she felt very much better when her shoes were tight. Suddenly, with all his might, the the enemy began to run towards the main character to carry out an attack. She ran so fast that she could not be seen with the naked eye. At that same second, a crushing blow struck Lin Fan, but fortunately, he was still able to block the attack. Trying to resist such a strong opponent, the young man only thought that the girl's strength was truly impressive, and he would not be able to resist for long. Meanwhile, Xiao Mei was amazed, because she was surprised that the enemy was able to block even this blow. After thinking a little, the guy finally decided to act and was going to carry out a counterattack, because this was his only chance. The boy was very nervous before striking, but still understood that otherwise he would simply lose. Raising his fists with all his might, Lin Fan was about to attack Mei Mei using the skill that the system gave him. This unexpected attack forced the girl to retreat, because she did not expect that the enemy would counterattack under such severe pressure. Realizing that it was necessary to end this fight, Xiao Mei decided to use her hidden technique called the Path of Black Silk. The blow of the protagonist and his opponent came together, and now they were measured in physical strength and endurance between each other. Unexpectedly, the young man felt severe pain in his hand, and shouted that his blow could not withstand such a strong opponent, which is why he decided to turn to the system to get help from it. But the system only replied that its genius does not guarantee invincibility, because for this you need to train. Immediately after this, many more blows from Xiao Mei followed. The main character experienced unbearable pain from the missed blows. Thus, the young man began to awaken old memories that he had previously tried to forget. Having received a strong kick attack right in his face, Lin Fan only thought about what it was like for him to live in this city before. From such a serious attack, the guy fell straight onto the asphalt, and it seemed that he would no longer be able to fight at all. It was noticeable that the enemy was much stronger than the young man who imagined himself to be a professional fighter. That is why Lin Fan began to become even more nervous, because now his life was at stake, and now he was ordered to apologize to Xiao Chao. The hero felt awkward from this turn of events, and understood that it was his opponents who should apologize to him, but he should not do this. Watching everything that was happening, Xiao Mei only exclaimed that if Lin did not decide to apologize, then in that case he would simply die. These words caused great anxiety in the young man, because he understood that if he did not listen to the girl now, then in the future he would no longer be able to live an ordinary life. His future was under threat, and now he wanted to think through at least some plan to get out of this situation unharmed. Starting to cry, the boy began to think that if he had not improved his skills last night, he would not now be in such a humiliating position. Even Grandmaster Zhen, watching the battle, exclaimed that when you fight against such a first-class martial artist, it is useless to resist, and it is better to give up. Suddenly, the young man began to remember his skills that he had previously acquired thanks to the system, and perhaps if he uses another skill in battle, then in that case he will be able to win. Meanwhile, Xiao Mei continued to mock the hero, and said that he cries like a girl, although he is a healthy man. Unexpectedly, Lin Fan decided to grab his opponent's leg in order to use his hidden talent. These actions really surprised the enemy, because the girl never expected such a weakling to continue the battle. It turned out that the hero decided to use a massage technique, and pressed the first Titjan massage point to calm his anger. Immediately after this, he pressed the second massage point called Tongan to put opponents to sleep. Continuing to watch the battle, the great master was simply shocked, because even he did not expect that Lin Fan would be such a smart guy. Li Shu Yusen just watched everything that was happening with his mouth open and couldn't understand whether this was really happening. Only the enemy was at a loss and wanted to know what the young man had been doing with her leg all this time. But literally a few seconds later, the girl began to feel very weak, and gradually she realized that she could no longer continue the fight. The lady felt sincere pleasure from the massage, because no one had ever given her a foot massage before. Starting to blush, Xiao Mei begged the main character to let go of her leg, because if he continues to massage her, then she will lose. The massage technique also included the Sanin Jo point to relax the entire body, as well as to support the female reproductive system and ease menstruation. This massage began to relax Xiao Mei even more, and she was literally happy with this turn of events. Thus, the smart guy managed to easily defeat his opponent using his hidden skills. After such an unusual victory, experiencing great difficulties, the young man nevertheless began to rise from the floor, because he was proud that he had won the fight. The proud guy only told his rival that she should obviously thank him for the treatment. What he saw caused alarm in the Grand Master, because he realized that these skills were the long-lost art of Wulin acupuncture. The frightened scoundrel immediately began to apologize to the hero, saying that he was ignorant. And Lin Fan's ex-girlfriend said that even after he won, she still wouldn't like him, and she was in love with Xiao Chao anyway, because he was not as barbaric as the hero. The proud guy only told his ex that it was her choice, and he was not going to stop her, but from now on he would only look forward to the future. Turning around, the young man said goodbye to his ex-girlfriend forever, saying that he would never be in a relationship with her again in the future. All this time, Xiao Mei was watching her opponent, and still could not get up from the floor because her body was completely relaxed due to the massage. The girl really felt great pleasure, but she was also very upset that she lost. Some time later, Li Shu Yusen thought that he did not expect Lin Fan to mature so much at his young age. Lin Fan was indeed very similar to his father in his youth, and when he was still fighting crime. This made the man extremely happy, because he was proud of the boy, because now he could stand up for himself. Suddenly, upon arriving at his restaurant, the man noticed a very strange Nikotka. This discovery was truly impressive because it was still unclear how Lin Fan was able to make so many noodles in such a short period of time. One of the restaurant's customers decided to order noodles, of which there was quite a lot in the kitchen, and the boss happily agreed to accept this order. Without hesitation, the man decided to give the noodles to his client, thinking that there is no need for good to go to waste. That is why he was going to sell the dish and end the working day. The smell of the noodles was really wonderful and it seemed like they must be very tasty. The hungry client decided to try the same noodles that Lin Fan had left in the kitchen. As soon as the stranger tasted the noodles, an incredibly loud scream was immediately heard from the dining hall, which immediately attracted Li Shu Yusen's attention. The excited owner of the restaurant immediately went into the hall to check what had happened. The man was simply shocked by what he saw. His eyes immediately turned red, and fear was visible on his face. According to the man, this sight was truly terrible, because he had never seen anything like this before. The next day, events continued to occur at Shenzhou University. The main character was sitting in the audience listening to a lecture, at which he was quite bored. Suddenly, the young man saw that pumping points began to increase in his system, and it was really very strange. Immediately the guy began to think about why points began to add to his account, because he did absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, Grandmaster Zhen told someone on the phone that he had found the right person. The interlocutor on the phone immediately decided to find out from the master who this person was, because Zhao's company is supported by Tian Honggang, and some student there cannot cope with him. To this, the great master only said that this student has his own methods with which he can defeat any opponent. After spending some time, the young man decided to enter the system menu and saw that he had accumulated 2,711 points, and this was a really good result, but he had to spend them somehow. The price of any product after acquisition was supposed to increase by an additional 0 at the end of the price. The price increase was indeed much higher than even the real estate market. Nevertheless, the guy's attention was attracted by one product called spring mushrooms, and he decided to find out from the system what it is. As it turned out, the more points he scores, the wider the assortment, but if his life is not in danger, then the system cannot reveal details about product. This was a really difficult choice, because the properties of the product were unknown, and the price would increase 10 times after purchasing it. Lin Fan didn't know when the Xiao family would decide to take revenge. He had a hard time with Xiao Mei, he remembered this clearly. Thus, the smart guy decided to ask the system if there were ways to improve his talent, and as it turned out, there were only 2 ways, but both of them are not simple. The first way is that you need to complete the special task of the system, but the complexity there is very high. Moreover, these quests are not available yet, and the second method is to buy spring mushrooms. Suddenly, the system realized that in this way it had blabbed about spring mushrooms, and immediately realized its mistake. Because of this, the system began to literally cry because it had broken its rules, but Lin Fan guessed that his system was indeed not the smartest. Angry with the guy, the system assumed that he was to blame for everything. Because of this, the angry system decided to punish the hero, and Izio shocked him with all his might so that he would understand his guilt. In fact, it was obvious that the system revealed all the information of its own free will, but the young man still suffered because of it. Unable to bear the screaming in the audience, the teacher immediately exclaimed Lin Fan's name. This was unacceptable for the teacher, because he did not understand how the student dared to disrupt his lecture, and if he was not interested, he could simply get up and leave the classroom. The students present at the lecture began to communicate with each other about the main character, and thought that he had simply gone crazy because he broke up with his girlfriend. One of the guys decided to support the hero and said that they were brothers in misfortune, and there was no need to get hung up on it, because there are a lot of fish in the sea, there are girls over 30, and if it doesn't work out, then over 50 years old. Suddenly, some girl came and decided to say hello to the teacher right at the lecture. As it turned out, it was Xiao Mei Mei. She was a student of the Wushu faculty, and said that she would also like to attend these classes. This turn of events really surprised the young man, because he did not expect that his enemy would study with him. The teacher was only happy about this and greeted the girl, because it was an honor for him to teach classes for a representative of such a noble family. All the girls in the audience immediately realized that it was Xiao Mei Mei, but it was unclear what the martial arts student had forgotten in their class. Some guys almost immediately fell in love with Xiao Mei Mei, because she was one of the hottest girls on their university list. But she also made it clear to everyone that she was not interested in a relationship. Everyone who approached her with love letters received a notable kick. The protagonist's interlocutor was surprised that Xiao Mei Mei came to the classroom, because it was completely unclear why she needed these lectures, as if it was all about some guy with whom she fell in love. Suddenly, the guy started to get very nervous because he thought that Xiao Mei Mei had a crush on him and was the reason she came here to study. As it turned out, it wasn't all about the main character's interlocutor, and Xiao Mei Mei decided to hit him with all her might, saying that she decided to sit here. Meanwhile, the students were discussing among themselves that Xiao Mei Mei could be in conflict with Lin Fan, because now her brother was dating the hero's ex-girlfriend. Perhaps she came to warn him not to interfere. A little embarrassed, the girl decided to turn to the guy, but she hesitated a little, because she was embarrassed to talk to him. None of those present could believe their eyes that Xiao Mei Mei was talking to the loser Lin Fan. Even the teacher was scared, because he had never seen such a beauty communicate with such garbage before. I feel awkward. The young man was only thinking that maybe Xiao Mei Mei had come to take revenge on him now, but the main thing for him was to remain calm. Xiao Mei Mei still decided to ask the teacher why they had a pause in the lesson, and the man immediately realized that he still needed to continue the lesson. Absolutely none of the students simply could believe that Lin Fan could like such a beautiful girl. The worried young man nevertheless decided to ask the girl what she was doing here and why she sat down with him. Blushing, Xiao Mei Mei said that students of the martial arts department could choose additional subjects, so she wanted to study medicine. After thinking a little, the boy immediately realized that she was just lying, and this was not the real reason why she was here. Its faculty recruits only the elite. The salary and status of graduates is truly impressive. Even the rector treats these students with respect. Studying medicine was indeed quite reasonable, but it was veterinary medicine, which was completely useless for a girl. Still, the young man wanted to forget about everything that happened in the morning and not hold grudges against each other, so that they would not have a conflict. Suddenly, Xiao Mei Mei took the protagonist's hand and began to place it somewhere. It turned out that the girl placed the guy's hand directly on her leg, thereby greatly embarrassing him. Such a turn of events was simply unimaginable for Lin Fan, because he could not believe that such a beautiful girl would do something like that. In fact, the girl wanted to learn the art of acupuncture, and asked the guy to show him how to master this art. Confused even more, the guy blushed, and did not understand what kind of feeling was overwhelming him. Immediately after this, the system began to call the guy, because it wanted to tell him that only he should know the art of acupuncture. That is why he said that unfortunately this is a family secret that has been passed down from generation to generation, and he cannot reveal it. Pressing herself against the guy with all her might, the girl began to repeat that she would recognize him as her mentor, and would this really not be enough? Unexpectedly, one of the guys began to get angry and shout at the main character, because in his opinion he was pestering Xiao Mei Mei. The young man no longer wanted to be in this state for a long time, and he understood that he could not stand this. Suddenly, the system decided to teach Lin Fan a lesson with all its power. It shocked him with an electric shock so that he would come to his senses. Looking at the guy, Lady immediately realized that it was an electric shock that appeared literally out of nowhere. After thinking a little, Xiao Mei realized that perhaps there was such a strong attraction between them that an electric shock was formed, which struck Lin Fan. At that very second, someone decided to knock down the door to the classroom in order to unexpectedly burst inside. It turned out that it was Xiao Chao along with some strong guy who wanted to understand who had offended his student. As it turned out, he was a martial arts teacher of the group in which the girl studied. Meanwhile, Lin Fan was trying to recover from the electric shock, and Xiao Mei was shocked by this turn of events, because her teacher unexpectedly came to this office. Suddenly, the teacher of veterinary medicine began to run away, saying that he had urgent important matters, due to which he was about to end the lecture prematurely. The dog standing on the table began to bark with all its might at the scoundrel who dared to interrupt the lecture. The scoundrel hit the puppy with all his might, who was completely innocent of anything, which is why the dog began to whine in pain. Seeing this, the young man realized that he couldn't just look at everything that was happening and needed to do something. Jumping with all his might, the hero was easily able to save the poor puppy, who could have fallen to the floor and gotten hurt. Watching everything happen, the martial arts teacher did not tolerate this and immediately began to attack Lin Fan. The smart guy tried with all his might to protect the puppy, because in this situation he was not to blame for anything, and had to live. Thus, the martial artist's primary attack was blocked, which surprised him greatly. The main character did all this because there was no need to offend an innocent animal, because he was the one the martial arts teacher was looking for. Coming closer, Xiao Chao told the teacher that this was the guy who bullied his sister, and then, when he found out about this, he beat him and 4 other students near the store. Due to what Lin Fan did, the teacher announced that he would now be suspended from classes, and then completely expelled. This turn of events was also unexpected for the girl, because she did not understand why such a nice guy could be expelled. None of the students could even think that Lin Fan was so reckless, and it was not surprising that the teacher of the martial arts department came here in person. After all, 4 students were beaten. Trying to justify himself, the hero began to say that the students attacked him first, and it was self-defense, but Xiao Chao exclaimed that he had proof to the contrary. Thanks to video surveillance, the scoundrel had a recording of how the young man hit him during self-defense. The 2 students who wanted to stop him were also beaten, which proved Lin Fan's guilt. Indeed, this video was irrefutable evidence of the young man's guilt, because it did not show what had happened earlier. The impudent man also decided to talk about what he heard, that Lin Fan is on good terms with the owner of the store named Lishu Yusen. His store is located on a plot of land rented from his family, which is why the protagonist's uncle owes Xiao Chao a debt. And if the debt is not paid, then the store will be destroyed, because rent for the territory must be paid on time. But due to the fact that Xiao Chao decided to give the guy a chance, he said to come to the address indicated on the business card after class. Starting to laugh, the scoundrel only exclaimed that he would wait until Lin Fan came to him. Some time later, events continued to occur after classes, namely in the red light district. In this area there was a very strange room, from which loud screams were heard that someone needed to be beaten. In fact, illegal fights took place in this place, and rich people could bet their money on the victory of one of the fighters. The fights in this club were really brutal, because people do not spare each other and try to fight to achieve victory at any cost. Upon entering the room, the hero only observed what was happening, and the system assumed that the student really had nothing to do here. Suddenly, Xiao Chao called out to the guy behind him, telling him that if he defeated the strongest warrior named Ghost, then he would forgive him for all his actions. For the guy it was quite simple at first glance, but the system began to stop him. They say that you need to think carefully before fighting. Seeing that Lin Fan agreed to the fight, Xiao Chao immediately called out to the judge of the fight and said that a new challenger had appeared for the fight. Before the fight, the opponents had to shake hands. Fighting with fists and feet was allowed, but it was forbidden to hit them in the eyes, and the creators of this arena were not responsible for injuries received. A girl not far from the scoundrel decided to turn to the young master, asking him why he was doing this, because Lin Fan had already been expelled from the university and his uncle's store had been dealt with, so it was unknown why give him a chance. For Xiao Chao, it was just more interesting, because he couldn't forgive him just like that, and this fight was just a bait that Lin Fan fell for. Now they are in an illegal den, where the police cannot detect them. The fighter named Ghost is a friend of Xiao Chao, and he has such strong skills that he can easily defeat Lin Fan. Also, the insolent man had a goal, namely to destroy this guy's house, his studies, although this was not enough, because he had to remain crippled. This is what happens to those who decide to harm the Xiao family. According to the girl sitting nearby, Xiao Chao was indeed very cruel, but she didn't even intend to stop him, and they just ate popcorn and watched the spectacle. Meanwhile, the fight began, and a fighter named Ghost began to run towards his opponent with incredible speed in order to end the fight with just one blow. Using his strength, the enemy used a flying blow, thanks to which he was able to knock the main character down. Looking at his hand, the young man immediately realized that he was experiencing unbearable pain, and the system only claimed that it had previously told him that he would not put up against such a strong opponent. These fights were illegal, and the system understood that this was not training for a university competition, and Lin Fan's boxing talent was too low to win. Trying to get to his feet, the trembling guy only thought that he did not agree with the system, and in any case he needed to win, because he promised his father that he would graduate from the university at any cost. Uncle Li also helped him after his father died, and he will not allow his store to be destroyed. That is why the young man only needs to achieve victory, because his opponent is not aware of his massage skills, and the main thing is to find the right moment to apply this technique. Suddenly, someone nearby decided to call the guy, wanting to tell him something. As it turned out, the evil ghost knew that Lin Fan understood the art of acupuncture and could use it in battle. At that very moment, Lin Fan realized that he could not win this battle because the enemy knew his secret attack. The enemy tried with all his might to prevent the protagonist from using the acupuncture technique on himself. The alarm system tried to talk to the guy, telling him that it was urgent to leave here, but Lin Fan continued to fight and did not listen to the system. The impudent guy was watching what was happening all this time, and only wanted the phantom to finish off the main character. In fact, during the battle, the ghost was able to reveal that Lin Fan was indeed a quite capable guy. All this time, the young man dodged every blow, and tried to avoid the injuries that the ghost could inflict on him. Suddenly, the man felt pain in his stomach, and this immediately distracted him from the endless attacks. The smart guy immediately decided to use this chance and began to swing his fist in order to strike. Starting to attack, Lin Fan hit the huge man right on the chin with all his might, and thereby knocked him down with just one attack. The blow was truly strong, as the ghost began to scream with all his might in pain, and it seemed that he would no longer be able to fight. After the opponent received such a serious blow, even the spectators noticed that he could no longer move as actively. On the contrary, the ghost was shaking with all his might, as if he was angry as hell and ready to continue the battle. In fact, the man simply had a very strong stomach ache, and he did not understand what was wrong, because Lin Fan had never even attacked his stomach. Coming closer to his opponent, Lin Fan told him that there was no point in standing and that he needed to continue the fight, but the ghost thought that his enemy probably did something with his acupuncture, although he did not have such a chance. At that very second, the young man decided not to hesitate, and slapped his opponent in the face with all his might, which humiliated him even more. This behavior on the part of the guy confused the ghost, and he began to ask him how he dared to hit him in the face. For this, the scoundrel was literally going to kill the main character, because now he was not only humiliated, but also insulted. The enemy's blow was too slow, and the hero was easily able to dodge it, and also received pumping points in the system. The enemy literally could no longer continue the battle, because he was experiencing unbearable pain in the abdomen. He really wanted to go to the toilet. It was clear from the man's face that he was experiencing an unbearable feeling of pain, because he really wanted to go to the toilet, but he could not interrupt the fight. Thus, the audience could not believe the spectacle because they could not imagine that the phantom would be in such a predicament. At this time, the man understood that if he went to the toilet right in the ring, it would be simply terrible, because he would be disgraced. Even Xiao Chao began to shout to the man that he should not stand still and should continue the fight. Meanwhile, the phantom tried to meditate, because if he leaves the ring, then there will be protection against defeat, and he can no longer go to the toilet. Each of the spectators present noticed that the phantom was concentrating ki energy. Fortunately, the man knew that he could wait another 5 minutes before going to the toilet, and that would be enough to end the fight. Unexpectedly, the main character hit his opponent again with all his might, asking why he was not fighting. After all, it was he who had previously sprayed saliva and shouted that he would win here. Another slap shocked the audience even more, because now they understood that Lin Fan really wanted to anger the ghost. The frightened man began to shout that he would now kill the young man, regardless of his young age. The young man didn't care and continued to strike the ghost without even encountering any resistance. Xiao Chao shouted with all his might to his mercenary that he should finish the fight with Lin Fan, because the ghost received a large amount of money, but now he is performing in the ring like trash. Suddenly, the referee announced that the ghost's mask had been torn off because he had received a large number of slaps. Lin Fan immediately realized who was fighting with him in the ring, and decided to find out from his enemy how much Xiao Chao paid him to fight here. In fact, the man who fought against the main character was Teacher William. This event greatly upset Xiao Chao. After all, they had been declassified in this way, and now they could no longer hide from justice. Some of the spectators present were students, and thus they learned that Ghost was a martial arts teacher at the university. The frightened man began to hide his face, and thought that due to the fact that he had been declassified, he would now be fired from the university. But the great master also could not foresee that it was precisely because of his sick stomach that he would not be able to continue this battle. None of the spectators present and even the commentator could understand what kind of sound was coming from the arena. Only the commentator suggested that according to legend, first-class martial artists are able to push their body beyond the limits of what is possible. If all 8 energy centers are open, then the body will be enveloped in powerful ki energy, the muscles will fill and increase sharply, making a loud sound. The excited commentator thus suggested that it was most likely the sound of muscles tearing, which means that the Phantom is an exceptional martial artist. This sound is loud, like thunder, and extended, like a beast. Even the commentator encountered such art for the first time, which is why he wanted to enjoy this spectacle. Those present were very happy that they were watching such a strong master, and even began filming him to capture this moment. Even Xiao Chao was very glad that the mercenary was so cool, and ordered him to kill this freak, because nothing would happen to him for it. Everyone started shouting at the ghost to kill Lin Fan because they thought that it was at this moment that the great master gained his true power. But in fact, at this time, Teacher William was trying not to go to the toilet right in the arena, and he was doing his best to restrain himself so as not to embarrass himself even more. The main character sang in the arena all this time, and thereby teased his enemy, because he knew why Teacher William behaved this way. After a little while, the teacher moved one of his hands back and began to hold the problem area to endure the remaining time of the fight. The commentator immediately suggested that this gesture was unique. The ghost put one of his hands behind his back, which means he is showing that he will defeat Lin Fan with just one hand. He truly deserves the title of an exceptional warrior, because such confidence is simply impressive. The smart guy still decided to tell his enemy that he shouldn't hold back, because when they shook hands at the beginning of the fight, he pressed his Jigo point. This acupuncture point has unusual properties, because if you press it, the enemy will really want to go to the toilet. Thus, if you endure for a long time and do not go to the toilet, then over time there will be an explosive effect. Getting even more angry, the scoundrel began to shout at the main character, telling him that he could not sing in the arena, but Lin Fan did not listen to this. Meanwhile, Xiao Mei Mei tried to run to the scene, because she understood that her brother had dragged Lin Fan into illegal battles. Fortunately, the girl arrived on time and saw that Lin Fan was now in the arena with the formidable warrior. Suddenly, the girl decided to intervene in the fight, and trying to hit the teacher, she shouted for him to move away from her man. This turn of events made Xiao Chao worried, because he could not even imagine that his sister would interfere in this. The main character tried with all his might to stop Xiao Mei Mei, and immediately began to run towards her, shouting at the same time that it was better not to interfere. Suddenly, the guy couldn't stay on his feet and fell right on top of the girl, which is why he accidentally kissed her. For each of the people present not far from this scene, it was simply impressive. After all, they could not imagine that such a loser would kiss a beauty. Feeling extremely embarrassed, Lin Fan apologized to Xiao Mei Mei, saying that he did it by accident. This caused Lady even more embarrassment, because she was embarrassed by this behavior, because no one had behaved like that with her before. Due to the fact that this caused a strong shock, Xiao Mei Mei lost consciousness and the guy immediately began to try to bring her to her senses so that she would come to her senses. The angry brother immediately ordered the guy to take his hands off his sister. Meanwhile, the teacher was only thinking that all the people nearby were very noisy, and he could no longer restrain himself. Gradually, William's vision began to blur, and he began to have difficulty seeing Xiao Chao in front of him. Feeling severe pain in his stomach, the man only tried to restrain himself so as not to embarrass himself in front of so many people. Trembling in pain, the teacher only thought that he no longer cared what they thought of him, because he really wanted to go to the toilet. Just a few seconds later, Teacher William screamed with all his might because he finally managed to relieve himself, but he did it right on stage. Watching everything that was happening, the commentator had no words with which to comment on this event. All the spectators were stunned by such an unexpected turn of events, because no one expected that Teacher William was capable of something like that. Xiao Chao now began to think that he hired a teacher who could not fight without diapers. Only the main character rejoiced at the victory because his points increased, and after that night the illegal fights were suspended indefinitely, and young Master Xiao Chao never ate popcorn again. Some time later, events continued to occur in Shenzhou's house. Some girl later communicated that Zhao's group and Tianhong Gang's illegal battles had been opened, and now they could no longer continue. The person on the phone only said that illegal fights could continue in the future, but Lin Fan also managed to defeat the ghost. The information she heard made the maid happy, because now she understood that Lin Tianzong had given the winning guy a map of the dragon's territory. But in the girl's opinion, this was unacceptable. The map of the dragon's territory belongs to them, the Ennian group. This is their treasure, but she is now in another place and will not be able to take action. As it turns out, the mysterious girl is at an unusual party, where she threatens a tied-up man with a huge sword. Trying to strike with a giant sword, the girl only said that murder is an acceptable measure. Some time later, events continued in a mysterious mansion, where unknown people said that the organization had just ordered the stealing of a dragon territory map from a boy named Lin Fan. For the unknown people, it was good that Lin Fan had offended the young master of the Xiao family and also made noise in their territory. Agents number 3 and 4 were sent to deal with this situation. Agent number 3 and number 4 were known for their bloodthirstiness, and by now, Lin Fan should already be dead. Walking down the street, a young man watched the number of his points, and thought that the more spectators there were in the arena, the more points he was awarded. But he also noticed a very strange phenomenon, namely, the number of points only increased each time, but it was not clear why they were awarded. Looking at the amount of points, the guy couldn't shake the feeling that he had become rich. That's why he decided to buy that same spring mushroom. This mushroom was really quite unusual, because it had the body of a fat man, and on the top of the mushroom one could see a face. The mushroom itself said that it really wanted to be eaten. For the guy it was really very strange, because he couldn't understand whether it was really worth the points spent. He couldn't just eat it, but the system said that as soon as he eats it, his skill level will be pumped to the maximum. Disgusted by the spring mushroom, Lin Fan only realized that he needed to mentally prepare himself, which is why he decided to go to the store first. Meanwhile, events continued near Lishu Yusen's uncle's store. Some strange muscular man held a child nearby and said that he really liked to play with children. As it turned out, it was martial arts master number 4, who was in Tianhong Gang's group. The girl standing nearby was named by Xiao Tian. She was also the number 3 martial artist and was in the same group. The smart girl decided to bite the villain who dared to grab her. Experiencing a strong benefit, the man immediately realized that in this case it was necessary to let the girl go, because the bite was really very painful. That is why the scoundrel literally threw the defenseless girl, who screamed with all her might for at least someone to save her. Fortunately, Lin Fan was nearby and decided to save the defenseless child, because he understood that he was in danger. Reaching out into the air, the young man was able to catch a little girl who was flying not far from him. Not understanding what was happening, the guy first decided to ask the little girl if she was okay. Starting to cry, the little girl named Li Xiaoying said that they had a problem. When the girl returned from school, there were a lot of broken glasses on the floor of the restaurant, and her father was nowhere to be found. Then these people appeared, and they also beat her, threatening her with violence. Suddenly, one of the masters turned to the main character, calling him Lin Fan, because they were looking for him because he had offended the young Master Shao and caused a turmoil in the illegal battles of the Tianhong gang group. This turn of events angered the young man, and he wanted to understand what was happening here, because Shao made a deal with him: if he wins the illegal fight, he will cancel all debts. In the man's opinion, this was a bad explanation, because there must be at least some documents with a signature, but due to the fact that they are Tianhong gang's group, they can do everything in this city. Unable to bear such impudence, Lin Fan immediately rushed into battle, shouting that these scoundrels had simply become insolent. As it turned out, the opponent was indeed very strong, because he was easily able to stop the young man's attack. The smart guy immediately used acupuncture techniques in order to have a different effect on his opponent. Even this technique, the enemy did not care at all, and he only gloated because the acupuncture technique simply did not work. The evil scoundrel immediately wanted to end the fight he had started, and hit Lin Fan with all his might, shouting that he was Qingluan, the most powerful fighter of the group. Even an army knife could not pierce his muscles, let alone his finger. Such a blow turned out to be really very painful, because of it the young man flew several tens of meters to the side and crashed into a wall. Qinglong thought that the guy who defeated William would be stronger, but who would have thought that he would be defeated with just one blow? Experiencing severe pain, the young man began to think that he was in great pain, and he could not even move, but the system screamed at him to stop, because he and his opponent had a big difference in strength. The little girl was very angry with the big guy, and she wanted to teach the scoundrel a lesson by shouting that no one dares to offend little brother Lin Fan. The impudent man reacted instantly to the girl's attempt, and threw her aside with all his might, so that she would not interfere with the continuation. From such a strong blow, the little girl immediately lost consciousness and could no longer resist such a strong opponent. "I'm trying to get up." The guy watched the thug and shouted to him to stop, because the girl was not to blame for anything. Master number 3 also noted that it was clear that they grew up in military families, and both of them did not give up. But the enemy was sorry that only those who did not go to university, and losers who cannot find a job, become soldiers. Hearing this, Lin Fan immediately shouted that his rivals should not dare to insult the soldiers. The girl didn't care at all about these words, and she jumped right on the main character, after which she began to threaten him with her knife. Swinging his knife, the enemy shouted that he would now finish the battle he had started with just one blow. Seeing that the enemy was about to strike, the main character decided to use a system technique called super healing. During the strike, the girl was very surprised, because she did not expect Lin Fan to communicate with himself. After delivering the blow, the man decided to ask the girl what their enemy was shouting, but as it turned out, Lin Fan screamed, and it was because of this that he received the blow. In fact, even when dying, this guy thought he could live and heal himself. According to his opponents, this was really very strange. Meanwhile, the spring mushroom crawled out of its pocket on its own because it heard the call of its owner. The clever mushroom immediately climbed into Lin Fan's mouth so that he could eat it and improve his skills. Turning around, the enemy was simply dumbfounded, because he did not understand how this was possible. According to the enemy, a ghost appeared in front of her, who literally came to life from the dead. The hero really felt terrible, but the system congratulated him because his boxing skill improved to 5 stars. Now he matched his skills with the world lightweight champion. At the same time, some mysterious guy was riding a bicycle and talking about how he was still on the way. The organization notified him too late, and who would have thought that the guy who insulted them would take possession of the dragon card. Masters number 3-4 were also furious. They did not answer. The chance that they had already been killed was very high. Suddenly, the stranger called again and was told that something unexpected had happened. At this time, the battle continued, and Lin Fan fought so well that he could easily defeat the strongest opponents. Moving with incredible speed, the young man struck at his opponent and shouted that he would take revenge on absolutely everyone involved in this. The guy even struck for the fact that the asphalt was damaged, as well as for Uncle Lee, who, in his opinion, was being held hostage, but in fact, they did not have hostages. Approaching closer to the second enemy, the young man still wanted to finish the battle he had started by finishing off each of them. I watched everything that was happening. The girl began to make excuses that if he dealt with her, then it would be the end for him, because other members of the group would come. The hero nevertheless decided to apologize to the girl, saying that he was sorry that her arm was broken. That's why he decided it would be better if she had 2 broken arms, that way there would be symmetry. After such a victory, it was completely unclear to the guy why he should worry about some gang that threatened him but was defeated. Suddenly, that same mysterious guy arrived on a bicycle and began to laugh, because he understood that only a map of the dragon's territory could endow its owner with such abilities. The impudent guy's name was Zhu Tian, and he ordered to give back the same dragon card that his father had previously given to him. Hearing such a request, the young man immediately decided to find out from the stranger who he was and why he dared to take the card that gives such abilities. Zhu Tian shouted again that he wanted to know where the map of the dragon territory was, which he received from his father. Suddenly, Lin Fan realized that this guy was also in league with the scoundrels who dared to destroy his uncle's shop, which is why he had to share the responsibility with them and pay compensation. These words only made Zhu Tian laugh, because he realized that his interlocutor was simply pretending not to know anything, in which case he would have to literally beat information out of him. The serious-minded young man exclaimed that in any case he would force everyone involved to pay compensation to his uncle for the demolition of the store. At the same time, one of the mercenaries also received a call and was told that Agents 4 and 3 had been defeated by Lin Fan. In the opinion of the strongest girl, their Tianhong gang faction was truly a bunch of weaklings, and now they wanted the Anying faction to also interfere in this deal. Another man said that there was no need to disturb the Anying organization, because number 2 had been sent for the battle in order to deal with Lin Fan. Hearing that Zhu Tian had been sent to fight, the girl immediately exclaimed that she would no longer worry about the outcome of the battle. Group member Anying also understood that in the past she had decided to support Tianhong gang's group. As it turned out, a large number of police cars had already gathered not far from the girl, ordering her to release the hostages and surrender. Suddenly, Lady decided to jump off the roof, and at the last moment she said on the phone that she would help only because Tianhong's group had Zhuke cultivation. Zhu Tian is also an incredibly strong opponent, and kills even his equals, although he is still a D-level master. The system also noticed that the enemy had key energy, a lot of it came from the enemy, and as it turned out, he was a cultivator. There are not many cultivators on their planet. Those who can use key energy are mainly associated with martial arts. The system has heard about their existence. In the understanding of ordinary people they have superpower. The evil scoundrel literally lifted the dagger from the floor with the power of his mind, and then decided to throw it straight at Lin Fan. Feeling great fear against such a strong opponent, the young man immediately began to think through a battle plan. The knife flew right not far from the young man, and then he immediately stepped aside in fear, so as not to get hit. His opponent just smiled and said that next time he would aim for the face, after which he again decided to ask where the map of the dragon's territory was. Starting to take off his t-shirt, the young man only insisted that he would no longer tolerate such treatment. After all, such a powerful blow is truly useless if it cannot achieve its goal. With incredible speed, the main character literally rushed towards his enemy, hitting him with all his strength with his own fist. But as it turned out, Zhu Tian has magic in which the enemy simply cannot hit him, because there is a magic shield not far from him. Looking at his enemy, Zhu Tian only said that the blow is indeed powerful, but it is useless if it cannot reach its target. Trying to strike, the hero literally could not understand what was happening, because he could not even move. Since Lin Fan decided to hit Zhu Tian, he apparently does not want to resolve the conflict of the world at all, and if he does not know how to use key energy, he will be many times weaker than an ordinary cultivator. The enemy just threw his knife and hit the wall, which was not far from the hero. But the real purpose of the knife is to surround Lin Fan with key lines in order to drive him into a trap. In this way, the enemy can control Lin Fan and prevent him from striking. Meanwhile, events continued to occur near a member of another group. The enemy was unknown to the soldiers, but he was holding the police chief hostage, so he should have been considered a high level of threat. The determined soldiers immediately began to attack their enemy in order to prevent him from escaping from the scene of the crime. At the same time, the girl jumped straight towards the police, and was already swinging her giant sword to strike. In fact, the girl admitted that she kills people quickly, and her boss likes to torture them first. The lady also really wanted to see how Zhu Tian could defeat Lin Fan. Using his magical abilities, the enemy was able to lift the air of the protagonist, and controlled his every movement. Taunting the guy, Zhu Tian ordered him to pose, and began to manipulate his arms and legs so that he would get into funny poses. Such behavior on the part of the enemy was unacceptable for the young man, and he immediately ordered him to stop laughing at him. Nevertheless, the good-natured enemy again told the guy that he just wanted to get a map of the dragon's territory. All this time, the hero could not understand what his enemy was talking about, because his father had gone missing a long time ago and had not given him anything. Zhu Tian assumed that his opponent was lying and stubborn, which is why he felt that he did not fully feel the situation. In fact, Zhu is the main specialist in obtaining information through torture in Tian Honggang's group. His torture is much more skillful than the worst tortures of the Qing dynasty, and he will closely monitor Lin Fan to ensure that he receives the maximum pain possible. The main character still continued to resist and shouted that he should try, if of course he could. Looking at his opponent, Zhu Tian could not believe that Lin Fan was still moving, although the lines of energy entangled him. A little more strength, and the guy will still be able to break out of these lines, and the system told him that the remaining points will only be enough for one, but its effect is limited, although there is a high probability that the enemy will weaken his forces. Nevertheless, the enemy decided to finish the battle that had begun, and with the help of magic he wanted to finish off the main character. Suddenly, an unknown man fell to earth from the sky and shouted for Zhu Tian to stop. The smart young man immediately realized that a poisonous blow had been used against him. The unknown man turned out to be a man calling himself Poison Hand, and Zhu Tian could not understand why he was here. As it turned out, the poisonous hand came here because Lin Fan is a member of the Zhao group. If he is harmed, then Zhu Tian will taste the most terrible poison in the world. Seeing the new enemy, Zhu Tian immediately realized that the rumors were true, and the enemy was really strong. Just to think that he would already be dead if he inhaled the air of the poisonous blow. But still, the poisonous hand was not going to compete with Zhu Tian and Tian Honggang's group for possession of the dragon territory map. That is why the young man was not going to give up and decided to use a couple of unusual tricks in order to defeat his enemy. Suddenly, Great Master Zhan began to emerge nearby and said that at this stage of the battle it was necessary to stop. Looking at the elder, Zhu Tian simply could not believe that two such strong opponents had come to defend Lin Fan. In fact, the elder was very happy to meet little Zhu, because they had not seen each other for a very long time. The elderly man pointed his finger at the main character and said that he needs to be respected because he likes Lin Fan. Suddenly, the old man saw a beautiful girl sitting on the floor nearby, and he immediately fell in love with her at first sight. The good-natured master took the girl in his arms and said that they would go to his house together, because grandfather's house was very warm, and she would be comfortable. But in fact, everyone understood that it was not a girl, but someone else who had performed the reincarnation. Instantly, the incredibly beautiful girl turned into Lin Fan, and Elder Zhan was still carrying him in his arms. Because of this, the man immediately began to feel very bad, and rainbows began to flow from his mouth. The slightly alarmed young man observed everything that was happening, and the poisonous hand tried to calm the elder, who in the near future would only have nightmares. Observing everything that was happening, Zhu Tian concluded that Elder Zhao and the poisonous hand were both here, and it was worth waiting. Moreover, it seems that this boy is not lying when he claims that his father did not leave him anything. Coming closer, the enemy decided to turn to the hero and said that his father still had to leave something behind before disappearing. This card is really very important. There are 5 of them: dragon, sand, water, acupuncture and feng shui. His father had one of them. Getting on the bike, Zhu Tian admitted that he didn't care whether Lin Fan went to his hometown or dug up the grave of his ancestors, but he had to find what his father left him. At the same time, an incredibly powerful magician decided to use magic on his allies so that they would not lie on the floor. Zhu Tian raised his allies into the sky and began to leave, at the same time saying that in 10 days he would take the card from Lin Fan, or his life. The worried guy just wanted to ask his enemy if he knew why his father disappeared, but the guy never received an answer to this question, and yet he did not understand whether his father really should have left some kind of card for him before disappearing. The first thing that came to mind for the main character when he thought about his father was this wall of honor in their old house in the village. Lin Fan rarely saw father due to his work, and the wall was littered with insignia and notes about father's achievements. For him, Dad truly was and remains the greatest hero of his life. The last time Lin Fan saw his dad was when he was in 3rd grade. In honor of one of his father's achievements, the villagers prepared a solemn meeting from the very morning and waited for his return at the entrance to the village. The main character was very nervous, because he had not seen his father for a long time, which is why he did not understand what to call him. Calling his father daddy was too casual, and father too formal, which is why Lin Fan thought that maybe it would be correct to call him daddy, but no, it was too childish. At that time, the boy understood that he had already grown up, and he couldn't act like a child, so as not to disgrace his father in front of everyone. That's why he realized that he would call him daddy, and not daddy, because it's more mature. Suddenly, the father exclaimed that he had arrived in the city, and asked his child how long he had been waiting for him. Feeling anxious, the little guy called his father daddy and asked if he was really back. Because of this, everyone began to feel awkward because Lin Fan realized that he had disgraced his father in public, and his father felt awkward because he was called daddy. It was on this day that Lin Fan learned something new about his father, but still got into trouble. Realizing that the situation was really not simple, the guy only thought that he wanted to get an explanation of what was happening and who had tried to kill him recently. The elderly man said that his name was Elder Zhao, and next to him was Meng Gan, the head of his security department. Thus, the main character realized that he was just teaching Xiao Chao a lesson, but somehow got into a more serious mess. Lin Fan began to talk about the fact that he was a simple, modest student, and wanted to understand why such serious people were going to help him. As it turned out, the elder still had one condition in order to help the guy, namely, he would have to become the boyfriend of his granddaughter and marry her a year later. These words really shocked the young man, because he understood that the elder's granddaughter was very young for him, and even in a year she would not be able to grow up. But the girl was very happy and congratulated her brother, because her grandfather said that after he finds a girl, he will no longer play with himself. For the main character, it really seemed like a joke, but suddenly, he understood the idea, and thought that the elder wanted him to pretend to be her granddaughter's boyfriend and secretly protect her, but the man only replied that he did not need fakes, but needed a real guy. Hearing this, the young man only began to understand that this was some kind of nonsense, because he was sure that many would like to get his granddaughter. This girl was truly incredible because she looked very much like a character from a Picasso painting. The elder explained that his granddaughter is the first beauty at the university. She is a delicate flower with great potential. She is also in good health and has no mental problems. In fact, all this was necessary, because Lin Fan is about the same age as the girl. He has an acceptable appearance, good skills, a good disposition, and they have one common enemy, namely the Shao group. But there was also one more nuance that the elder wanted to talk about. But this story had to start from the time when Jean was still very young. Unable to bear this, the guy immediately stopped the man and said that he did not want to listen to old stories, and asked him to tell him everything briefly. The warriors from the Zhang group did not like this behavior on the part of the young man, and they stood rooted to the spot, simply watching Lin Fan. Turning to his colleague, the elder asked him to take Lin Fan to the underground secret room in order to tell the truth. Feeling bewildered, the man nevertheless agreed and was going to take the main character to the room so that he would learn the secrets. What they were going to tell him was a very tragic story, so they left the girl to wait outside. Realizing that there might still be a catch in the future girl, the young man immediately decided to find out if she had any curses that could affect their marriage in the future, but the elder convinced her that everything was fine with her. Shortly after this, an elderly man decided to show off a wall that was literally painted with the names of different people. With a determined look at the protagonist, the older man revealed that it was a list of all the women he had slept with since he was 18 years old. Due to the elder's passionate past, all of her granddaughter's suitors turned out to be his descendants, and he even received a warning for creating a threat of overpopulation. Meng Gan also once courted the elder's granddaughter, and he was favorable to their union, but one day something unexpected happened. Namely, the elder found the name of Meng Gan's mother on that very wall. Thus, the elder took the blame on himself for the fact that his granddaughter did not know about love until now, and wants to correct his mistake in order to help her. After he made inquiries about Lin Fan, it was confirmed that he is not his relative. After everything that had happened, the young man was clearly uneasy. He felt simply terrible, because he could not understand how this was even possible. Feeling very stressed, he only said that something too much had happened to him today, which is why he wanted to go home, but the elders immediately stopped him. The elderly man decided to tell them that their family also had a map of the dragon's territory, and he suggested that they take a look at it together. Zhongxue gave the guy only 10 days to find and give the dragon card. That is why the elder wanted to tell him where exactly it was possible to find that very card. If after 10 days he does not give the card, then Lin Fan will definitely be killed, because with his abilities at the moment, he is not a strong rival for Zhongxue, but if he can gain the favor of her granddaughter, then the elder will not only let him look at the card, but will also provide support and protection. The benevolent man said that his uncle's store was financed with the loan he took from the Shao family, and he could help pay off the debt, and the hero and the girl could live in their guest rooms for a while, but suddenly, Lin Fan exclaimed that it's not for sale. After thinking a little, the young man turned around and decided to ask his grandfather where his granddaughter was. Suddenly, Mengan stopped the guy and exclaimed that since he could not be with the elder's granddaughter, then as a younger brother he should test Lin Fan's ability to protect the girl all his life. Such statements greatly surprised the main character, and he decided to ask the guy how old his girlfriend was. As it turned out, she was 24 years old, but Mengan was only 19 years old, although he looked much older. A man's poisonous hand poisons his body, and this is a side effect of magical abilities. But the brave warrior still decided that he would give the main character a head start and would not use the poisonous hand, and if he wins, then only in this case will he be able to receive his blessing. The dumbfounded elder shouted that there is no need to complicate things to the point of absurdity, and even if Mengan fights with one hand, he is still an E-level martial artist. A few seconds later, the friendly guy found himself slammed into the ceiling, and was easily defeated with just one blow. For the main character, this really was not a problem, and he was easily able to defeat such a weak opponent, after which he wanted to look at the elder's granddaughter. Walking along the corridor, an elderly man said that his granddaughter is now on a business trip and will arrive only tomorrow morning. That is why he prepared 2 guest rooms for a temporary stay, because now his uncle's store is in ruins. The worried girl couldn't figure out where her father was because he didn't answer his calls, but her grandfather convinced her that the police only accept missing persons reports 24 hours after the disappearance, but there's no need to worry because he sent a person to his search. This really calmed the girl down, and she was going to go to her room to rest a little, and finally she told Brother Lin not to play with himself in someone else's house. This made the guy very angry. He immediately said that the little girl shouldn't say things like that things. Entering his room, the young man sighed heavily, because he understood that too much had happened today, and this was causing him to be very tired. Suddenly, it turned out that the guy was not alone in the room, and there was also a maid who greeted the guest and said that she was here to make the bed. Meanwhile, events continued to occur in the Shao family's territory. Very angry, a man hit Xiao Chao incredibly hard right in the face. Angry, the elderly man began to shout that every day the guy had some troubles at the university, and now he had ruined the underground battles. This man turned out to be the father, who is also very worried that even his sister was involved in these problems, and now she has locked herself in her room and no one knows what she is doing there. The evil man continued to shout that even Tian Honggan could not help in this situation, but the guy asked him not to dwell on this, because they were still looking for Lin Fan. Suddenly, some guy asked his father not to worry, because he had good news from a spy in the Zhao group. Hearing this, the man immediately approached his younger brother and said that he should learn from him and direct his energy against the Zhao group. All the information was stored on a flash drive, and it was really worth billions of dollars. The guy who got it was called Xiao Zong. He is the 3rd heir of the Shao family. Meanwhile, events continued to happen in the Zhao family's house, where the main character was closely watching the maid. The system immediately decided to cheer up the young man and asked him what kind of dirty thoughts were in his head, but the guy began to make excuses, saying that he was just thinking about how he could earn more points. Turning around, the maid asked the guy if he was accidentally looking at her from behind. The benevolent girl exclaimed that if the distinguished guest has any needs, then as a maid, she is ready to fully satisfy them. Suddenly, the system gave the guy a task that urgently needed to be completed, and it was necessary to find the secret hidden on Fan Xiaoman's body in 10 minutes in order to activate the mission. The smart guy immediately decided to ask the girl if her name was Wei Xiaoman, and she admitted that this was indeed the case, although she was very surprised that he knew her name. After thinking a little, the young man realized that the system explained that there were only two ways to improve skills. One of the possible improvement options is to eat the spring mushroom, and the second, this will complete special quests, but eating the spring mushroom is really difficult. Among other things, prices rise by an order of magnitude after purchasing a spring mushroom, which is why it is difficult to improve the skill in this way. After 10 days, the main character will have to face Zhongque again. Even if he finds his father's inheritance, he certainly shouldn't give it to him, so he needs to improve his skills in 10 days. The determined guy realized that he needed to not only gain points in 10 days, but also complete as many quests as possible. Deciding to lie down on the bed, the girl said that not many guests remember her name, which is why she can lie down with a guy and tell a bedtime story. At the same time, the system was angry with the young man because he did not want to complete the tasks, but wanted something else. Angry, the system inside the guy detected a jump in heart rate. That's why I decided to find out what he was up to, but the embarrassed guy didn't want to admit. Bowing his head, Lin Fan exclaimed that he would do this solely for the sake of the quest. He only had 5 minutes so that he could find out the girl's secret, and he can only do this if he listens to her bedtime story. It's like a battle of spies getting along with each other's information, and of course he is nervous. The system immediately began to apologize, saying that it had misunderstood the young man, because in fact he was thinking about the quest, and the artificial intelligence incorrectly interpreted the information. Because of this, the artificial intelligence literally began to cry, but the guy calmed him down, saying that he was not to blame for anything, and it was just a mistake. Continuing to be embarrassed, the main character began to walk towards the bed, and said that he was doing this for the sake of their common mission, as well as for the sake of their prosperity. The maid on the bed took out a book and asked the guy which fairy tales he liked best, and offered several options, for example, The Soul of God, or The Immortal Teaches Me to Wear X. Suddenly, looking up, the guy noticed that for some reason he was gaining points for leveling up his skills in the system. Looking at the maid, the young man understood that she had no emotional outbursts, so it was completely unclear where such a number of points came from. At that very second, Lin Fan still realized that perhaps this was really a setup. That is why he decided to stop all this, and decided to still turn to the maid, saying something. The kindly guy exclaimed that although he was really interested in all these stories, he was afraid that young Miss Zhao might misinterpret all of this. That's why he said he could walk the maid to the door so he could have some alone time. This turn of events really surprised the girl, because she did not expect the young man to behave this way. Unexpectedly, the elder ran in with his colleague and exclaimed that Lin Fan passed the test with excellent and he was doing great. The elderly man decided to apologize to the guy, because he wanted to check him before introducing his granddaughter to him. The maid's name was Wei Xiaoman. She is Zhang's granddaughter's personal maid, and she is like family to them, but she is already married, so he asked her to pretend and try to seduce the hero while they were watching. Bowing his head in front of the elder, Lin Fan began to say that this was truly an honor for him, and he was glad that he had passed this test. Although in fact the main character was very nervous, because he had no idea that this was a test, but fortunately, everything was misunderstood in this situation. Watching the guy, the elder saw that he was already going to the maid, and almost freaked out and finished him off right on the spot. Fortunately for the young man, he was really able to react quickly and correctly in that unusual situation. The elderly man still decided to say that his granddaughter was at home all this time, but he wanted to check the main character first before allowing him to see her, but since he passed the tests, he is now worthy of it. An incredibly beautiful girl named Zhao Lingming immediately entered the room. She was the executive director of the Zhao Corporation, as well as the heiress of the Zhao Group. Looking at this girl, the guy immediately realized that she was really a beauty, but immediately realized that he had already met her somewhere before. Feeling very angry towards the guy, Zhao Lingming shouted that they had met before, but did not understand how it happened in the first place. This turn of events really surprised the girl, and she exclaimed that this was the same scoundrel who pestered her in the toilet. All this happened in the women's restroom a month ago, and where the main character began to pester Zhao Lingming, he crawled up to her and began to lick her leg. Thus, Lin Fan could not even imagine how he could justify himself in such an awkward situation, because he did this at the moment when he had just acquired the system and almost died, which is why he needed to get points at any cost to restore his vitality. The determined girl was very angry with the guy and said that he shouldn't even be given a chance, but the elder still decided to listen to him. Things were really bad, and it was difficult to explain something like that, because Lin Fan could not tell his future girlfriend about the system that he had received back then. In the meantime, the system decided to remind the guy that he only has 30 seconds left until the end of the time allotted to activate the quest. If he fails this task, then the quest will no longer appear for him. The relatives demanded an explanation from the main character because they wanted to understand why he did this. Meanwhile, the maid left the room. Suddenly, the main character began to run towards the door with all his might, and everyone immediately saw that he was running away. The determined young man realized that he could not give the maid the opportunity to escape, because if he did not have time, then there would be no more quest. Feeling very angry, the boy realized that he had no time left and needed to act as quickly as possible. The secret that was mentioned in the quest should be hidden on the girl's body, and Lin Fan wanted to understand where exactly it was. Shouting after Wei Xiao, the young man decided to find out what she was hiding on her body. Hearing this, the girl began to run away with all her might, and the main character realized that he was right after all. The guy really wanted to complete this task, which is why he decided to use his power to stop the scoundrel. In order to stop his target, the young man used a crushing palm strike, due to which the floor literally began to crack. Due to the cracks on the floor, the maid began to stumble and almost fell while running. But the young man himself could not resist, and began to gradually fall, at the same time shouting that the maid needed to stop. What happened next really shocked absolutely everyone who watched what was happening. The awkward guy fell right on top of the maid, and the elder and his granddaughter watched all this, and did not understand how to react to something like that. The hero literally forgot where he was, and why he was even running after the maid, but the system decided to remind him that there were only 13 seconds left. Meanwhile, looking around, the young man still discovered that there was some kind of flash drive lying on the floor. There was very little time left, and the girl shouted that she needed to be released, but the guy did not dare to do this, because he wanted to complete the task. Alarmed, Zhao Lingming screamed for the pervert to let the girl go, because he had no right to restrain her. Taking off her bag, the girl exclaimed that no one would dare to corrupt her friend in her own home. Throwing the bag, Elder's granddaughter exclaimed, "Why don't you call the police, and she'll sort everything out herself?" As it turned out, with the help of her bag, the granddaughter began the transformation and acquired the first form of her magic suit. Thanks to the first phase of rebirth, the girl had iron fists, and now she wanted to knock all the perversions out of the young man's head. Experiencing severe stress, the boy began to shout that he could explain everything, but Zhao Lingming only said that her fists would speak with him instead of her. Time was already running out, and it was necessary to first grab the secret flash drive, and then try to explain everything that happened here. Realizing that the situation was truly losing, the hero understood that he had to stop the girl, but it was also impossible to cripple her. Still, the smart guy understood that she was a married woman and a professional in her field, which meant she had a weak point. This is why the massage professional decided to press on acupuncture points that strengthen the lower back and knees, as well as relax muscles and treat back pain. Pressing the acupuncture points really worked, and the maid immediately relaxed. Thus, the girl could no longer move, which greatly simplified the task of obtaining the secret flash drive. There was only 1 second left, and fortunately, the guy was still able to pick up that same flash drive. Looking at his hand, the boy realized that he had completed this task, and the system notified him that he had found the secret of Wei Xiaoman, and the quest was activated. At that same second, a powerful blow followed in the protagonist's face, which really caused colossal damage. The young man experienced incredible pain from the force of this blow, but still wanted to try to explain the situation that arose. The future wife was not going to listen to him, and wanted to strike again, because she understood that this scoundrel could not explain to her what had happened. Trying to justify himself, Lin Fan shouted that he only pressed the acupuncture points and did nothing else. In an attempt to fend off such a strong blow, the young man also decided to attack, and used the imperial strike against the steel fist. Fortunately, the main character still managed to resist Zhao Lingming, because he was strong enough to do so. But my hand still hurt a lot after the blow, because the glove was really strong, and it was quite difficult to fight against such an opponent. The smug Zhao Lingming was glad that her opponent broke his arm, but at the same time she understood that Lin Fan broke her titanium glove, and not everyone can do this. Realizing that it was necessary to complete the battle that had begun, the girl continued to attack and was going to smooth it out again. Suddenly, as if out of nowhere, the elder appeared and decided to ask the main character where he got their company's flash drive, and Lin Fan admitted that it fell out of the maid's pocket. The friendly elderly man decided to give the guy a chance and said that they would now look at the contents of this flash drive together. As it turned out, the flash drive contained information about a patent for a new phone that was developed by the company. Thus, Zhao Lingming was able to find out that the maid was running away and taking away corporate information in the process. In fact, the maid admitted that her daughter had unknowingly signed a contract with KTV Karaoke Television, whose owners turned out to be Xiao. She was forced to do this in order to save her daughter. The frightened maid understood that she was doing wrong, but her daughter is the most precious thing she has, so she had to promise Xiao that she would spy in exchange for her daughter's freedom. Watching everything that was happening, the young man finally understood why this maid did what she did. And as it turned out, the mission from the system was directly related to the current situation. It was necessary to save the missing girl, and the time to complete it was only 2 hours. Starting to cry, the maid decided to tell her that when she was 18 years old, something happened. It was then that she lived with a guy and somehow they forgot to clear the table after eating, and when they fell asleep, the rats came running and chewed on the contraception, which is why she became pregnant. And when her boyfriend ran after the rat, he fell into an open sewer manhole and died. The maid really tried very hard to raise her daughter correctly, but the rebellion of adolescence also affected her. Because of this, she and her friends became addicted to illegal drugs and began to often steal money. But this was not enough, and she borrowed money from the Xiao family. Since she had nothing to pay off the debt, she sold herself to the KTV company. The mother tried with all her might to save her daughter, but her debt was huge for a long time. Even working tirelessly, she could not pay it off, so the Xiaos offered her to spy. After all, they promised to exchange her daughter's freedom for the secret of Zhao's company. Not understanding how this was possible, Zhao Lingming still wanted to ask the maid why she didn't tell everything earlier, but the woman only apologized and continued to cry. Angry, the elder exclaimed that the Xiao family had crossed the line of what was permissible, and Zhao Lingming, together with Meng Gan, needed to go to the CTV and save the girl on behalf of the Zhao family. The determined protagonist, along with his team, wanted to go into battle and help them save the girl. But as it turned out, they did not call Lin Fan, so they decided to hit him so that he would not go into battle with them. Zhao Lingming was against the company of the protagonist because he molested her and her relative, and now she wants to go have fun on KTV. That's why he needs to stay here and wait for her grandfather's verdict. The young man tried with all his might to stop his team and asked to listen to him. But in order to listen to the guy, only the elder remained, and he decided to ask him why he licked her granddaughter's feet and hugged the maid. Experiencing a strong shock, the guy did not understand how to explain this, because he could not say that he did one thing to cure, and the second to complete the task, and it's not even about revealing the existence of the system. He will simply be sent to a mental hospital. Looking at his watch, he also knew that if he did not convince Elder Zhao, he would not only fail the mission, but also lose the trust of the Zhao family. All this time, the elder continued to stand over the main character and waited for his answer. And the boy just lay on the floor and thought about what he should answer in this situation. Meanwhile, events continued to occur in the KTV organization. The strongest warriors were already in the building, and Meng Gan grabbed the guard, saying that he had no right to stop the Zhan family. At that same second, a girl came and noticed that the poisonous hand came along with Miss Zhao. The wretch exclaimed, "Are they really planning to give Miss Zhao to them to serve the guests?" Meng Gan could not bear such behavior from a stranger, and he immediately began to beat the witch, because he could not allow anyone to insult the mistress. But as it turned out, the stranger was also quite strong, and she used a hidden fan strike technique. The blows of two incredibly strong warriors clashed together, and with the naked eye it was possible to see the energy barriers from the powerful contact. This turn of events began to worry Meng Gan extremely, because he realized that the enemy would not simply give up without a fight. The smart stranger realized that in this way she could easily fend off the attacks of her enemy. Initially, the girl ordered the staff to close all exits from the building, after which she said that she would be happy to show hospitality to her new guests. Still, the girl decided to introduce herself. She is Madame KTV Lu, from the Tianhong group. Meng Gan immediately started talking to the girl about how she is the main thing here, and they suspect that their KTV company is forcing girls to sell their bodies, which is why they will now call the police. As it turned out, the girl didn't care at all, and she wasn't worried that the police would come here. Suddenly, Officer Chen came out, whom Miss decided to ask if they were doing something illegal in this establishment. The drunk and red-faced man said that he does checks in this building every day and every night, which is why everything here is decent and legal. Thus, the poisonous Adlin realized that illegal affairs were covered up by corrupt police officers, and it was not surprising that the Shao group quietly carried out their dirty deeds. These words made the policeman extremely angry, and he could not allow someone to call him a corrupt official, which is why he was going to detain the scoundrel and send the police station. The administrator of the establishment began to say that they were slandered and called an illegal business, which is why Officer Chen began to restore justice, saying that one should not worry, because he is the personification of justice here. Watching everything that was happening, Meng Gan realized that there was no point in arguing with this corrupt policeman. Realizing that there was no other choice, the guy exclaimed that in this case, justice would be administered by his poisonous hand. The frightened policeman immediately pushed some girl away and ordered her to block this blow. Meng Gan immediately began to attack the innocent girl, and with all his strength he raised his poisonous hand to strike. Gradually, the girl's vitality literally began to drain away, and now she could no longer live her old life. The officer was very frightened by this, and did not understand how to proceed further, because the enemy was much stronger. Due to the poison that was used on the girl, hair began to grow on her body, as if she had become a man. The hair on the girl's body increased several dozen times, and now she looked more like a yeti. It turned out that it was a special poison, based on hormones, and provokes intensive hair growth on the human body. After poisoning, the victims become overgrown with fur, like gorillas, and are immobilized, entangled in their own hair. When he poisoned Qinglong, the fourth of the Tianhong group, with this poison, he spent 4 hours a day getting rid of vegetation for a year. This was the most harmless poison in his arsenal, and he does not like to maim people, which is why Meng Gan tried to be still kind and ordered to call all the girls. The administrator of the establishment was not going to cooperate with strangers, and immediately began to attack the man. And this was truly surprising, because Meng could not understand how the girl dared to attack his hand directly. During the attack, Meng Gan was still able to touch the administrator, which is why he thought that he would now force her to taste the poison. But as it turned out, the girl didn't care at all, and she continued to attack with her fan. After the attack, she exclaimed that the Zhao family had fallen so low that the security service was at such a level, and Qinglong they had the weakest opponents and stopped for, but it would be extremely difficult to fight against Zhongxue in general. The girl herself is a much stronger opponent than Zhongxue. Meanwhile, the policeman was only thinking that it would not hurt him to use poison for hair growth. The interrogation at the Zhao family mansion continued, and the elder still decided to ask again why Lin Fan groped the feet of both of his granddaughters. The alarmed guy could not understand how to answer him. It is possible that he was hallucinating and it seemed to him that these were carrots, but he is not a rabbit, or maybe his ancestors are aborigines of a tribe in which hugging legs is considered a greeting. The elderly man still decided to ask the guy if he liked legs, but perhaps if he answered yes, this would solve the problem, given the elder's romantic past, but perhaps he was just waiting for an honest answer. The excited guy admitted, saying that the elders had really guessed and he liked legs, but at that moment he didn't have any vulgar thoughts. Because of this answer, it was noticeable that the skill level points in the system immediately increased, which meant that the man was showing signs of emotion. Watching everything that was happening, the young man could not understand why he was awarded upgrade points, as if his interlocutor was angry, and he answered incorrectly. The enraged old man again decided to ask the guy why he did this, and asked him to think carefully before answering. Starting to get up from his knees, the guy only thought that he couldn't answer in the style of a pervert, which meant he needed to come up with something that wasn't formulaic so that his interlocutor would be speechless. The determined young man nevertheless exclaimed that all this happened only because he likes legs. During the Stone Age, the climate was harsh and the environment was unfriendly, people had not yet mastered the use of tools, and legs were the only way for humanity to move forward. Women by nature are not endowed with such strength as men, but they did not merge life from generation to generation on their slender legs. These legs left their traces throughout the world. In addition, when the men were exhausted and wounded, they returned to their native cave with loot and food. In the absence of pillows, the only way to regain strength for future accomplishments was on the woman's knees. And in ancient times, when people had not yet learned to walk upright, legs were what people saw when they looked up from the ground. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. Beautiful legs are the reason for the development of human civilization. The love of slender legs is embedded deep in the DNA. Beautiful legs were indeed the reason for the development of human civilization. The old man was simply shocked by what he heard, and he immediately climbed up to the young man and began to hug him. Thus, the elder said that he had finally found his like-minded person, because he had been very lonely for many years. That is why the old man said that a man with such deep thoughts about women's legs would certainly be an exemplary husband, and he was right in his decision to entrust his granddaughter to him. At the same time, the battle continued, and Meng Gan fought diligently against the strongest opponent in his life. Group Security Chief Zhao couldn't even defeat the KTV madam he had to fight, and the woman immediately realized that it was no wonder that the Zhao family had intercepted so many business partners of the Zhao group. The smart man was watching his opponent all this time and drawing conclusions about the conduct of the battle. Indeed, in fact, the air flow created by the fan was not at all simple. She uses her built-in legs covered in fishnet stockings and armed with stilettos for counterattacks, and the fan to deflect his poisonous blows from the course. Gritting his teeth, Meng Gan shouted that he had no other choice. His left hand is also very poisonous. It has 3 seals on it to suppress the most dangerous poisonous gases. Each time he removes the seal, he releases more poison. But with each seal, the effect on his body increases. When the 3rd seal is removed, all living things within a radius of 10 miles will die, including himself. This is why Meng Gan decided to let them witness the true power of the poisonous hand. Suddenly, with all her strength, Zhao Lingming hit her partner directly from behind, causing him to experience extreme pain. Not understanding what was happening, the man was only thinking about what had happened and why he was attacked from behind. Meanwhile, events continued to happen in the Zhao mansion, where the conversation was that the main character wanted to go to the KTV and save the girl. And this was really so. The young man really wanted to help his granddaughter and the poisonous hand in such a difficult situation. The smart old man exclaimed that each of his team could easily cope with the Zhao family. Meng Gan practices both medicine and martial arts. He once single-handedly killed several people of the Tianhong faction. The glory of the poisonous hand quickly spread to all 4 directions. Since he headed their security department, neither the Zhao family nor Tianhong dared them bother. His granddaughter's martial arts ability is average, but last year she became the first in the university's martial arts department with the help of her design talent. The designed armor she called the Iron Man of Heaven. Even in a fight against D-rank, they will fail. In this regard, there is no need to worry about them, and it is better for the guy to think about how to make his granddaughter happier. The old man was going to call his team, because most likely, everything has already been settled. But as soon as the man tried to call his granddaughter, it turned out that she was out of range of the network. No one could understand what happened, and Zhao began to think that perhaps the problem was with the phone. Suddenly, the maid decided to talk about what she heard from Zhao, that the KTV group was transferred to the Tianhong group because of the illegality that was going on there, and for the head there is now a particularly strong rival named Xian. Hearing this, the elder immediately realized that his granddaughter and Meng Gan were in danger, and they would not be able to cope with such a difficult opponent. Xian is the most mysterious character of the Tianhong group. No one knows who he is or what he can do, but they say that those who saw Xian are either dead, missing, or even gone crazy. Even the police did not know anything about what was happening, and this greatly worried the elder. If their opponent is Xian, then they are most likely in danger, and this was indeed a chance for Lin Fan to complete his task. The elderly man nevertheless agreed that help was really needed, and yet, he decided to help the young man at least somehow, which is why he gave him something unusual in his hand. The elder also ordered the guy to remember that his task is to reconnaissance the situation. If he sees that it is dangerous, then he must immediately return without delay, and it is generally forbidden to engage in battle with Xian. Not understanding what was happening, Meng Gan wanted to ask the young lady why she hit him from behind. During the attack, it seemed that Zhao Lingming was simply possessed because her eyes turned red and she acted unnaturally. What was happening worried Meng Ganya because he did not understand how to behave in such a situation. Looking the girl straight in the eyes, the guy only thought about what the hell was going on here, and what was wrong with his partner's eyes. The opponent's arms also did not move, and it was obvious that superpowers could not be used with just the power of thought. Trying to continue the battle, Meng Gan realized that his sister was being attacked like crazy, and it was difficult to block such attacks. During the fight, Meng also realized that he had already removed one seal from his hand, and even now he was afraid of his poisons. If he used them, he would definitely harm his ally. That is why it is necessary to deal with Madame first. If he manages to touch her even through her clothes, the poison will cloud her consciousness. Suddenly, something happened that no one expected at all, and it shocked even Madame. Due to the fact that one seal was activated, Meng Gan literally died in front of his ally and enemy. At this time, Lin Fan was already on his way to the KTV, where the battle took place. Looking around, the young man could not believe that he was able to ride in a limousine, and he realized that the world of rich people is simply amazing. Thinking about the upcoming battle, the hero only understood that Xian seemed to be someone strong, but he must be no weaker than Zhongxue. That is why the boy decided to find out whether he really was owed 3 lucky summons for unlocking the quest. Due to the fact that the task was completed, the young man was able to spin the roulette again, and he got 2 bowls of noodles. Pressing the roulette button, the hero told the system that if he doesn't get the skill now, he will post on all social networks that his system is the worst. Fortunately, the boy still got a 5-star talent, which he was very happy about. But as it turned out, this talent was that he would have a 5-star resistance to alcohol. Taking out his phone, Lin Fan immediately began to threaten the system, because he wanted to write about her on social networks, but the system did not understand his indignation, because he was a great talent, and no one could outdrink him. Even if he drank a tank, that's it will still be sober. The system also said that all the goods of the first level were unlocked, but the boy saw that all the goods had incredibly strange names, and he still decided to buy everything for which he had enough points. Suddenly, the artificial intelligence warned the guy that with his amount, a package of the golden rod, an older sister and a tycoon experience card were available for purchase. At the same time, the driver exclaimed that they had already arrived at the appointed place. A friendly guy got out of the car and warned the driver that he had left 2 plates of noodles in the back seat, and said that he could eat it with pleasure. Literally a few minutes later, Lin Fan was already not far from the scene of the incident, where the battle took place. Watching the young man, the artificial intelligence decided to warn him that the mission was of increased complexity, and perhaps he should change his mind, but Lin had already decided that he would complete it. To deal with Zhongyue in 10 days, he needs to become stronger, and he will have to move straight, even if he walks straight into a trap. Suddenly, the guy was met by a large number of girls who immediately greeted him, because after spending time with them, no girl would be good enough. For a poor student like him, who was used to sneaking beer into such establishments, visiting an elite KTV was a great discovery. In the most luxurious karaoke bar, Lin Fan was in deep awe. The shock of this discovery could be compared to that which the Pirate King from One Piece experienced when setting off on his journey. This feeling was also similar to a lost Earth meeting a new sun. That is why he decided to call Madame so that she would give him as many as 10 people. At the same time, events continued to occur in a completely different room of the club, where the captain ordered Meng Ganyu to touch him so that he would grow hair. The alarmed guards did not understand why the man behaved this way, as if he really liked other men. The bald man ordered him to touch his head with this poison, because he wanted his hair back. The smart man understood that in Meng Gangya's poisonous hand there were enough secret recipes for a wagon load of money. If they knocked out these recipes, then even Prince William would grovel before him. The police captain even began to consider that today he was really very lucky. After all, even the young miss of the Zhao family danced with a pole for him, which made this evening unforgettable. For the scoundrel, it was truly an incredible sight, because he could not believe his eyes that he was actually watching this. The administrator realized that the Zhao family would not stop there, and asked for help from the policeman, and he understood that they had broken into someone else's property and started a fight, so he detained their general director. The corrupt policeman at that moment also realized that he was the law in this city, and the Zhao family would be completely unable to oppose him. Suddenly, someone started shouting from behind the door that they had an important guest. The tired girl told the administrator that they were in big trouble. They got into trouble because a strange guest arrived with a lot of money, and he demanded to be treated like an emperor, but despite the fact that many girls were sent to him, he was still not satisfied. The concerned worker decided to turn on the CCTV cameras to show what was really going on in their guest room. The sight was truly amazing because the guy who arrived had a huge amount of money. At this time, the main character ordered the girls to look carefully, where the acupuncture points need to be pressed. There were a total of 14 celestial meridian points, and 48 key points, and a total of 409 different points on the human body, and they all need to be remembered. It is also necessary to familiarize yourself with different methods of occupational therapy. After all, if they bill you for $1,000, but press on the wrong points, then it is not surprising that their business is not very good. Like KTV, they should provide all the famous songs, but they don't even have a song called Speak Like a Cat, and their massage is lame on both legs. That's why it's completely unclear where their professionalism is. Watching the stranger, the police understood that they would be complete fools if they could not earn this money. After all, this client probably has very whimsical taste, which is why it's time to use his trump card. Suddenly, a girl came out nearby and immediately addressed the distinguished guest. Seeing this girl, the hero immediately blushed and was embarrassed, because he did not expect to see her here. Standing nearby was a strange stranger who wore glasses and did not look like the usual girls here. The stunned young man immediately decided to find out who this girl was, but she asked not to ask about it, because fate itself brought them together in this crowd. That is why the stranger asked us to close our eyes and guess about each other's character type, personality and interests. Feeling interested, the boy agreed and said that he would do it. The insidious girl immediately began to think that since none of her sisters could get his approval in the massage, then in this case she would try. Touching the young man, the girl applied her skills using massage techniques. The smart guy immediately grabbed her hands and exclaimed that she was taking him for a fool, because she was the daughter of Wei Xiaoman. Realizing that she had been declassified, the girl used an acupuncture massage technique and pressed 5 points on her hand. From this turn of events, the main character felt very good, and he liked the way the massage was given to him. But the boy was not so simple, and he was going to make a counterattack, because he knew how to resist the acupuncture technique. With the help of a counterattack, the stranger also felt relief after a short massage. After a short battle, the young man's system pumping points immediately increased, and a certain explosion occurred that separated them. Thanks to his agility, the guy was able to dodge the attack and immediately got back to his feet. Getting ready to continue the fight, Lin Fan thought that such precise and simultaneous pressing of acupuncture points was developed through decades of hard training. The girl also noticed that there was a professional in front of her, and he was able to counterattack while pressing the points, and besides, his level is much higher. Thus, the girl realized that she had met a truly worthy opponent. Meanwhile, the system warned the young man that as a reward for opening the first mission, the system provides the opportunity to improve a skill of his choice, and Lin Fan decided to choose to improve the massage skill without hesitation. Thanks to the improvement, the massage skill was now pumped up by as much as 2 stars, which gave an advantage during the battle. Waving her hand, the stranger exclaimed that she would have to resort to her secret technique. This level of massage cannot be bought for any money. Those few who were lucky enough to experience it fell at her feet. This is an unusual technique, and Milana is called the multi-armed Bodhisattva. Using a similar technique, the main character shouted that the girl should not insult the Bodhisattva. Thanks to his new skills, the young man immediately applied a series of prolonged massages to his opponent. Thanks to such an unusual technique, the girl felt truly strong pleasure, which gave her the opportunity to enjoy such a wonderful massage. Her opponent pressed all points of her body synchronously as many as 6 times, and this feeling was much better than her technique. A little embarrassed, the lady still decided to find out how he knew about her, but Lin Fan said that in order to learn such a high-class technique, Dad had to spend a huge amount, and it's not surprising that Mother couldn't find it all the time. Extending his hand, the hero told the girl to go with him to visit her mother. After these words, the girl immediately stood up from the floor, and still decided to say something before going. A little embarrassed, Yen asked the honorable guest if he really wanted her to accompany him, and if so, then he needed to win the game. These words confused the guy, because he didn't understand what it all meant. As it turned out, this was an unusual game, and they ordered 6 bottles of 38-year-old Royal Salute whiskey worth 83,000 yuan. After such an order, the waiter was very happy and decided to ask which payment method was more preferable, by card, bank transfer or e-wallet. The richest guest today said that he has a lot of money and will pay in cash. After thinking a little, the young man realized that in order to take Yen, he needed to beat her in this game. As it turned out, the main character was really very smart, because he used the Tycoon Experience card, and the cash will turn back into pieces of paper in 30 minutes, you need to win exactly before this happens. Determined, Yen wanted to make the first move in the game, and began to cast lots. According to the rules of the game, it was necessary to guess which combination came up, and the loser drinks whiskey. If the hero succeeds in winning the girl, he will take her home. After the cast of lots, the young man said that he thought that a large combination had come up, but as it turned out, 3 ones had come up. A large number of girls immediately came to the main character, and they began to wish him good luck in this game. Watching the guy, the girl concluded that he was a major who simply hated losing. This guy was probably one of the golden youth spending his daddy's money, and since he decided to compete with her in a game of dice, he would lose cruelly. Without hesitation, the main character continued to drink, and did not get drunk at all while doing this. On the contrary, Lin Fan really liked the taste of whiskey, and he drank every glass with pleasure. Receiving a large number of points to pump up the system, the boy could not believe that he lost more than 10 times in a row. The concerned lady immediately decided to ask the waiter whether it was diluted alcohol, but as it turned out, even after 6 bottles of diluted alcohol, their guest should have already been drunk. The waiter decided to bring even more alcohol, but stronger, and even after that Lin Fan was not drunk at all. This turn of events really surprised the waiter and the girl, because they did not understand how this was even possible, as if he were the god of alcohol. Feeling very anxious, the girl exclaimed to bring the strongest alcohol available in this establishment. Watching everything that was happening, the administrator and the captain discovered that this guy really had an impressive resistance to alcohol. The man even realized that with his training, he would not have been able to hold out that long, and in general he had never seen the kind of alcohol that this guy drank. The next alcohol that needed to be drunk was 10 bottles of Polish selected vodka Spiritus Rectifilocanija for a total amount of 23,000 yuan. Such a percentage of alcohol greatly surprised the young man, and he could not believe that such a thing existed. As it turned out, this was drinking with the highest concentration of alcohol, even higher than medical alcohol in hospitals. After thinking a little, the boy realized that the ability really turned out to be useful, and he was completely sober after so much alcohol, but the time of the Tycoon card ability would soon run out. Looking at the glass with dice, the young man understood that if he could see through the glass, he would easily win, but he did not have such a skill. Suddenly, an idea came to his mind. How is it possible to win in such an unequal duel? To see through a glass you need to improve your vision to a superpower, and the only way to achieve this is quite unusual. Namely Tianting acupuncture points. Using an unusual technique, the boy began to act and massaged his forehead. Initially, the master of his craft used a point on the bridge of the nose in order to see better. The subsequent use of the abilities consisted of pressing the 6 points of the seta. Watching the strange guest, the girl could not understand why he was itching all the time. Realizing that she needed to continue selling alcohol and win this fight, she was going to continue this game. Having thrown the dice, the opponent asked the hero whether the combination was large or small. Thanks to his skills, Lin Fan could now see through the glass. And with the help of the second massage level technique, he will be able to improve his vision even more. As it turned out, the magnet on the girl's hand reacted, and it was not surprising that the hero lost all the time. But now the smart guy was obliged to win, because he saw exactly what combination came up. He could also see something else that confused him a little, because the girl had a rather unusual outfit. Looking at her guest, the girl thought that perhaps he was gradually starting to get drunk, and asked for a quick answer about what particular combination was drawn. The young man felt very confused, because there were quite a large number of beautiful girls around him, and he had the gift of seeing through objects. Starting to laugh, the enemy realized that all she had to do was give Lin Fan 96% alcohol to drink, thanks to which the victory was won. Having considered his further actions, the hero only understood that his move to improve his vision was really wrong, but he could still do at least something to win. Closing his nostrils so as not to lose blood, Lin Fan thought that it was necessary to end this duel as soon as possible. And to make everything fair, this time he was going to open the glass himself, under which were those same dice. Thus, thanks to his skill, the main character was still able to win the fight for the first time. Seeing this, the girl could not believe her eyes, because she understood that this was the first time she had lost to someone. Lin Fan immediately held out a glass of alcohol for his rival, and said that he had won, and now it was her turn to drink. Experiencing a strong shock, Yen first thought about whether she should drink this glass of such strong alcohol. The determined lady still realized that it was just one shot, and she could handle it. The main character immediately decided to praise his rival for her courage, which is why they were going to continue the duel. As she began to get drunk, the girl only thought that Lin Fan had found out that she was cheating, but it didn't matter, because even without cheating, she had been winning this game in CTV for years, and her chances of winning were about 90%. But the next round of the battle was a losing one, because the hero wished that a big combination would appear. Because of this, the girl started drinking again, and the next glass was more difficult for her. The next round in the game was also Lin Fan's, because thanks to his vision, he could see what combination would come up. The alcohol she drank made her opponent blush even more, and she already felt very bad. This was the first time the staff present had seen Yen lose to an ordinary person who was quite weak in this game. Coming closer to the girl, each of those present began to ask her if she was okay. The amount of alcohol that Yen drank was impressive because she managed to drink as many as 10 shots in a row. Because of such a victory, the main character was very happy, because he realized that he deservedly won. The embarrassed boy decided to pick up the girl and said that, based on the conditions of this fight, he should take her with him. Meanwhile, the establishment staff were very happy that they had earned a huge amount of money, and were thinking about how to spend all this cash. But literally a few seconds later, all the money turned into ordinary paper. Looking at the staff, the young man realized that the tycoon's card had expired and all the money had returned. Realizing that there was no other way out, Lin Fan and Yen began to run away from everyone, and the employees of the establishment ran after them, trying with all their might to stop them. Suddenly, the administrator of the establishment used her wind technique using a fan. The wind was really very strong, and the main character could not understand where this wind came from. Immediately after this came a strong blow, with the help of which the administrator was going to stop the young man. Having stopped the guy, the girl exclaimed that she spent a lot of time wondering who this young gentleman was, but as it turned out, he was just an ordinary swindler. That is why the administrator wanted to find out from the handsome little boy where exactly he came from, and whether Zhao's group was involved in this. Looking at his opponent, the guy only thought that if he looked into the abyss for a long time, then the abyss would also look at him. Indeed, thanks to his X-ray vision, the young man could see something incredible, which he liked very much. Some time later, the main character came to his senses and saw Zhao Lingming and Meng Gan in front of him. The girl administrator was very glad that the guy woke up, because she didn't understand why he lost consciousness. The attached young man decided to find out from his interlocutor who she was, and as it turned out, she was the local madam. The system instantly decided to warn the guy to be careful, because the heartbeat of Zhao Lingming and the poisonous hand was very weakened. Thus, the system realized that probably the protagonist's partners simply lost the battle, but also that the artificial intelligence could not detect the heartbeat of this woman. Madam noticed that the handsome little boy decided to leave KTV without paying his bills. Theoretically, the system is a perfect technological device, and it is impossible to hide the heartbeat from it. Realizing that the opponent was truly unusual, the young man immediately assumed that the girl's name was Xian. Suddenly, the captain came up and asked where this guy even came from, and why he called the girl Xian. After all, in fact, how did the police captain turn out to be the same Xian, the man behind the CTV organization, and since the identity of this man was revealed, then now Lin Fan had to die. This turn of events shocked the main character, because he could not even imagine that the policeman would turn out to be a villain. The guy immediately became angry, because it was completely unclear how it was possible to commit atrocities as a policeman. But the man only replied that his interlocutor knew absolutely nothing about this world, and KTV was now under his protection. Having hit the young man with all his might, the policeman did not begin to repeat that this is how their society works, and there are policemen like him everywhere. Soon after, the scoundrel revealed that a few years ago, soldier Lin Tianxuan disappeared along with a national treasure that was worth millions. He abandoned his wife and son to the mercy of fate, which is why the policeman considered himself good compared to him. Xian immediately noticed that the guy was angry with him for some reason and wanted to yell, but even if he tore off his vocal cords, no one would hear him or come to his aid. The guy still decided to ask if they really wouldn't hear him, no matter what he did hear, and the evil man replied that this was indeed the case. Even the police could not come here now, because as long as Xian was here, she should not have come to this establishment. Hearing this answer, the heroes immediately rejoiced, because he realized that he could do anything with the scoundrel named Xian. Not understanding the guy's answer, the man got angry, because since he knows his identity, he will kill him, and then write everything off as an accident in the report. As it turns out, Xian previously won the boxing championship belt for 3 years in a row, and is also a D-rank martial artist. At first, the impudent man was going to use a technique called the dragon comes out of the mountain, and wanted to hit the main character right in the nose. And then he will hit with a double shot through the ears, destroying the eardrums and the doyang point, depriving him of the ability to navigate. Then, the next blow will be called a black tiger, tearing out the heart to cripple the opponent even more. And the last technique will be called shuriken, which will send the young man to the next world. Suddenly, a rope was heard, and the main character was able to easily get out of the trap, and soon after that he hit the villain. The impudent man immediately flew several tens of meters to the side and hit the wall. This turn of events greatly shocked the administrator, because she did not expect their guest to be so strong. This guy even got out of the trap on his own, and it was clear from him that he was very angry. In severe pain, the policeman began screaming that his arm was badly damaged and he could no longer fight. The scoundrel could not understand how a guy could inflict serious bodily harm on him, after which he is a corpse, and his entire family is not tenants. But a good-natured guy came closer and said that he had overdone it a little, but he was a massage therapist and could easily set the bone in his hand. Using massage skills, the main character was easily able to set the bone from the policeman. But this brought enormous pain, because Xian did not expect that such a procedure would actually be so painful. After the procedure was carried out, the corrupt policeman realized that his opponent did all this on purpose. The boy smiled and said that if the man was unhappy, he could set the bone back for him. The smart young man again began to use his massage skills to set the bones of the scoundrel. Thanks to such procedures, the guy easily managed to get a large number of upgrade points. Due to severe pain, the man lost consciousness, and Lin Fan now understood for sure that he would no longer receive system leveling points. Touching the man's face, the guy only thought that perhaps he should bring him back to consciousness with acupuncture and score even more points. Suddenly, a girl came up behind her and ordered the young man to stop. The administrator wanted to say that the guy has no evidence that he was wrong, so the more he cripples him, the longer the sentence will be. After thinking a little, Lin Fan came to the conclusion that it was necessary to extract a sincere confession from this corrupt policeman. Suddenly, someone nearby shouted that he was the law in this city. It turned out that it was Zhao Lingming, who exclaimed that they didn't understand anything about this world at all, and KTV was under her protection. In fact, the girl had the entire conversation recorded, in which Xian talked about being a corrupt police officer and protecting KTV. Thanks to her intelligence, the girl was easily able to obtain a sincere confession from the scoundrel. Seeing this, the hero was immediately happy because he realized that his beloved had come to her senses and could finally control her body on her own. Looking at the administrator, Zhao Lingming guessed that she was controlling people using neurotoxins. Her fan has neurotoxins built into it that have no effect on the poisonous hand. But they affected the girl herself, and she was again able to control her. Although during the battle, a mistake was made in which Zhao Lingming hit Meng Gangya with a poisonous glove. After all, the smart lady built in a function to awaken the carrier in the absence of feedback. This turn of events aroused the enemy's interest, and she decided to find out when the girl came to her senses. As it turned out, she came to her senses immediately after the first blow to the poisonous hand. But she still pretended that she was still under control and deliberately slapped during the last attack. Otherwise, he, being rank E, would not be able to hold out against the hail of blows from her gloves. As a result, they obtained evidence of their crimes, and now all that remained was to take the girls and free them from captivity. Suddenly, a corrupt policeman began to stand up nearby and shouted that no one dared to do this to him. The dissatisfied man trembled with anger and shouted that no one had deceived him like that, and now they were all corpses. In order to make the transformation, the scoundrel decided to take a pill, because thanks to it he will turn into his highest form. As soon as the pill was taken, the man's body immediately began to change its appearance. Using a magic pill, he managed to transform his body, and now he became much larger and more muscular. The villain shouted that this is his true power, and now the enemy can only cry because they will lose. The brave young man said that he would test his strength during the fight, because he understood that it was necessary to test his 5-star boxing skill. The policeman began to swing his fists and shouted that he would crush all his opponents. Suddenly, at that very second, someone made an attack directly on the scoundrel's forehead, and thereby caused him colossal harm. From his injuries, the man immediately began to fall to the ground, and gradually his body began to transform again. This turn of events was truly shocking for the main character, because he didn't even carry out the attack. As it turned out, that same attack was carried out using a fan that was in the possession of the administrator. Looking at his opponent, the guy immediately thought that he was already dead, but in fact he had simply lost consciousness. Zhao Lingming was able to determine that a man in this form would be able to fight great masters, but the administrator was easily able to knock him out. Which is why the girl was perplexed, because she didn't understand why all this was necessary, because they had previously fought together. Each of those present now wanted to find out who this girl really was and why she did what she did. In fact, it didn't matter who she was, the main thing was that she wouldn't fight with Xian. The administrator also decided to hand over evidence of the illegal actions of this club. I'm getting ready to leave, and finally the girl said that she has one request, that the hero and his partners take care of the local girls. Looking at Lin Fan, the girl also exclaimed for him to say hello to the Barlara system from her. The system and the young man were simply shocked by this turn of events, because they could not even imagine how this girl knew about artificial intelligence. Thanks to her fan, the administrator was able to disappear right in front of Lin Fan and Zhao Lingming. Also, the former enemy decided to give the main character her stocking as a reward, and said that they would meet in the future. Thus, the young man realized that their enemy had escaped, but fortunately, he had left evidence, and he would preserve it. But Zhao Lingming really didn't like this, and she immediately decided to hit him for being such a pervert, although she only recently began to like him. Experiencing severe pain after the blow, the guy began to cry, because not only was he humiliated by the girl, but his stocking was also taken away. Now they just needed to figure out what exactly to do with Xian, who had been unconscious all this time. Looking at the man, the young man realized that he needed to come up with something. After thinking for a while, Lin realized that he still didn't have enough points to buy something new, and all that was left was a package of goldenrod and a big sister, but it was unknown whether they would be useful. Also, the elder had previously passed on a skill called piercing arrow. Some time later, events continued to occur in the night city of Shenzhou. Suddenly, someone decided to release salute right in the center of the city. The fireworks immediately began to explode in the sky and formed some kind of inscription that was supposed to call someone. It turned out that Zhao's bodyguard immediately saw that the piercing arrow was calling for their help. A large number of mercenaries immediately gathered to get into their cars to drive to the scene. At the police station, everyone also said that they had received an urgent report about the illegal activities of the KTV club. All the police immediately began to gather in their cars in order to go to the crime scene and detain the villains. Thus, literally a few minutes later, the police and Zhao's guards were already at the place where all the events took place. At the same time, the police and security guards could not understand what they were doing here. Suddenly, someone was discovered on the roof, and the sight was truly impressive. After all, as it turned out, someone was standing on the roof with a strange stick and was planning something. Getting ready to fight, the police immediately pointed their guns at the villain, and the guards were ready to fight with their fists. But at that same second one of the policemen recognized his colleague who was standing on the roof. It was Xian, who was wearing boots, leopard print stockings, and a golden pond pole that was included in the golden rod package. The man also wore a big sister talisman, which made him act like a little sister. Thanks to the main character's antics, the man literally danced on a pole, and did it as if he liked it. In turn, no one liked this spectacle, and everyone looked with disgust at what was happening. Looking at the number of his points, the guy was very happy, because he understood that a large number of people experienced different emotions. Unexpectedly, someone nearby turned to the guy, because he wanted to tell him something. It was the elder who wanted to tell the young man that he had performed admirably in this operation, and he truly deserved to be his chosen grandson-in-law. Because the main character not only destroyed the club, but also incapacitated Xian, this will definitely undermine the strength of both the Seven Shao family and the Tianhong faction. Although Poison Hand is still in a coma, his granddaughter is working on a special medical capsule for his recovery, and at the moment his condition is stabilized. The elder also decided to order his staff to investigate Madam. But first, the excited elder wanted an answer to one single question. This question was why Lin Fan brought all these girls from the club to the elder's house. The smart guy responded that they should help those who find themselves in a difficult situation, they should try to place these girls somewhere. The man was afraid that he would not be able to handle so many young girls around his body, but the ladies agreed to everything. The maid was also very grateful to the main character, because she understood that thanks to him her daughter was saved. Unfortunately, the woman did not have the money to pay for such kindness and could only offer payment in kind. The main character really liked this proposal, and he even decided to consider this option. Seeing the guy's reaction, the elder immediately began to get angry, because he wanted to understand what he was going to do with his two granddaughters and great-granddaughter. Although in any case, due to the machinations of the Shao family, their Zhao family had serious financial problems, they even cut staff, so it is not clear where to place all the girls. Thus, the elder decided to take the girls to his room to discuss what they would do next. Suddenly, the young man had a task, namely, it was necessary to rid all the girls of addiction in 2 hours, and help them find a new field of activity before tomorrow. The deadline is 9 in the morning. There were literally 2 hours left to complete the task, and it was necessary to act urgently. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door, and the elder invited him to come inside the room. It turned out that it was Uncle Li, who was delighted to see Lin Fan and the elder. The main character was incredibly happy because he realized that his uncle was alive and he was fine. Meanwhile, events continued to happen at the police station, where the deputy chief was very angry. The man tried to convince the deputy chief that the KTV club was under the protection of the Tianhong group, and they had recently suffered large losses of personnel, and now it was not worth taking risks. The killer dealt with the boss's family and killed all the guys who were present at the operation. That is why the deputy chief understood that she owed her life to her boss, because he had previously saved her. And judging by the flyer dropped by the killer, this KTV and the Tianhong group are closely related. This time they were going to deal with them forever, which is why the deputy chief ordered the entire squad to pack their equipment and prepare to leave. Suddenly, one of the employees came over and decided to tell Wutenglen that a club called KTV had just closed. At the same time, the uncle communicated with the elder and the guy, and was surprised that so much had happened, even though dumplings and coercion were carried out, but the relatives were fine, and this is the main thing, because of which he was very grateful for the helping hand. After all, it's all his fault, because he took a debt from the Shao family. The elder only exclaimed that there is no need for gratitude. If he thanks anyone, it's the young man. He helped him a lot, and in gratitude he helped him deal with his debts. Out of excitement, my uncle fell to his knees because he felt guilty, because he understood that only he was to blame, and his relatives solved the problem for him. Looking at his uncle, the guy decided to ask why he was wearing a mask all this time. As soon as the man took off his mask, everyone immediately discovered that something had happened to his mouth. Li Shu Yusen decided to still tell what happened, but decided to start the story with that plate of dumplings. When Lin Fan went to study yesterday, his uncle noticed that there were a lot of prepared dumplings in the kitchen, although they did not look like they were prepared according to his recipe, but if there is something to sell, then the opportunity should not be missed. Suddenly, pitiful screams were heard outside and immediately the uncle ran to check what had happened. The excited man saw that the client was burned, and he looked so that even his own mother would not recognize him. Trembling in pain, the client tried to say that it was very tasty for him, but he did it with great difficulty. That is why the uncle realized that it was still necessary to taste the dumplings. And to his surprise, he discovered that these were the most delicious dumplings he had ever eaten in this life. These dumplings were also the most scalding because they were very hot. The strange thing was that the uncle and his client tried many ways to cool them down, but even in the refrigerator, the dumplings still remained hot, which made them the hottest dumplings in the world. In the end, they could not resist the temptation of this wonderful taste, and, suffering from burns, they ate all 10 plates. As a result, due to severe burns, she and the client were sent to the hospital, and they didn't even have time to take their phones with them. Even the elder could not believe in something like that, because even when they received burns that required them to be in the hospital, they still did not stop, and it was surprising that there were such delicacies in the world. The hero realized that under no circumstances should he talk about the system, and lied that his father once taught him a secret recipe that had been passed down from generation to generation, so he tried to make it. The worried uncle still decided to find out if the guy had given the dumplings to someone else, because they can be very life-threatening. It was at that moment that the main character remembered that he had given the dumplings to the driver of the car who brought him to the club. Frightened, Lin Fan immediately began to run to the driver's aid in order to prevent burns. Unfortunately, as soon as they arrived at the car, they immediately realized that they were late, because it seemed that the driver was unconscious. Looking at one plate, my uncle immediately decided to ask why there was only one, because there should be two. Having come to his senses, the driver still said that he gave the second plate of dumplings to the woman on the floor above. As soon as he arrived and parked, a girl on the second floor smelled a pleasant aroma and asked to share it with her, so he shared it. And the girl from the second floor was quite familiar to the main character and the elder, which immediately caused concern, because the second plate was with the uncle's daughter, and Lin Fan and the elder immediately began to run to the girl for help. A few seconds later, they were already there, and were not far from Xiaoying's room. Approaching the door, the guy shouted with all his might at the girl not to eat the dumplings. But as soon as they opened the door, they saw something that they could not even imagine. Meanwhile, events took place not far from the club, where Xian shouted with all his might that the police should not approach him, because he had been slandered. For all the police, the appearance of the police captain remained a mystery, because they did not understand why he dressed like that. The police captain continued to shout that he was injected with some kind of medicine and he was dancing here, although he was trying to catch the criminals. Only Wudenglan decided to approach the scoundrel in order to deal with him and find out what really happened. The girl immediately discovered that the man, being the captain of a law enforcement detachment, turns out to be involved in patronizing crime, and she and her operational punitive squad are today eliminating this evil for the sake of the people. This turn of events only made the scoundrel laugh, because the girl had only 6 bullets in the revolver, and there were 12 of them, as if the operational punitive squad had lost its brains. The arriving police ordered Wudenglan to move away from the captain, because they thought that the girl threatened the safety of their commander. Grabbing a stick, the man began to try to attack, and shouted that he wished his enemy's death. Due to the fact that the employees saw the captain in this form, their eyes simply failed, and they could no longer look at everything that was happening. At the same time, the girl took out 2 drums, which she wanted to use for shooting with a revolver. Using his incredible abilities, Captain Wudenglan used an unusual technique called an ultra-fast burst of 12 bullets. Thanks to an unusual skill, all the enemies were defeated, and now there was no one left to resist the arrest of the criminals. Now each of the villains was unconscious, and could no longer resist enforcing the law. In fact, all this time the girl was shooting at enemies with rubber bullets, which made her shots non-fatal. And if it really was Xian, then he wouldn't have been shot so easily, because he was probably already wounded by someone. One of the police officers heard the waiter say that a guy from the Zhao family did it, and took all the girls for himself. In this regard, Wudenlin realized that the CTV called Nightly Fun was transferred by the Zhao family under the leadership of the Tianhong Group, and the guy from the Zhao family seemed to have decided to take this business for himself. The determined lady realized that she must find the very guy who took all the girls. At the same time, the young man absolutely could not understand where he was getting such a large number of skill upgrade points in the system. To the surprise of the relatives, it turned out that by that moment the girl had already finished absolutely all the dumplings. They were incredibly tasty, and she didn't even get burned. Even the girl herself didn't understand why all her relatives came running to her and asked what was the matter, because everything was fine with her. The main character decided to ask the system what was the matter, and as it turned out, these were dumplings cooked on real fire, and they had 3 tastes, one of hundreds of delicacies offered in the universe on the tip of the tongue. Commoners cannot taste this. But these dumplings were very scalding, which is impossible to eat. Then it is completely unclear how Xiaoxing ate them, but the system could not give an answer, because the contract indicated to her that she could not divulge the secret. The uncle suddenly noticed that the guy was talking to himself, and to this Lin Fan only replied that he was just lost in thought. The smart man immediately asked the young man to show him how to make these dumplings. After all, if the problem with burning could be solved, then there would be no end to the customers, but the hero said that it was very difficult, and the father told no one to reveal the secrets of the recipe to anyone. Because the guy refused him, Uncle Li actually looked very upset. In the meantime, the young man understood that there were only 2 hours left before the end of the mission. If there really was no lights out from the client, then it would be possible to use this somehow. That is why the hero exclaimed that he would definitely reveal the secret of dumplings and make his uncle's dumplings a chain covering the entire country, like McDonald's. Some time later, events continued to occur near the Zhao family estate, where one of the servants reported that the KTV club was closed. The wounded worker said that even their patron Xian could not help in this situation. The police detained him. The worker wanted to interfere and take the girls, but in the end they just beat him. The head of the Zhao family was simply furious, and understood that he simply would not leave the Zhao family alone, and would kill everyone who was involved in this. Suddenly, the youngest son told his father not to worry, because it was just nothing, and he decided to give a hand to the worker, because he saw that he was injured. This was the third heir of the Zhao family. Not expecting such a turn of events, the man immediately thanked the young man. Touching the worker's hand, the guy decided to thank him for his contribution to the Zhao family's business. The waiter was flattered by this behavior and said that there was no need to thank him so much, because his hands were dirty and they could dirty the gentleman. But in fact, everything was planned that way, and the young man was planning something more terrible. He bent the worker's arms with all his might, causing him to scream in pain as the blow damaged both of his palms. Immediately after this, the scoundrel jumped with all his strength and hit the innocent man with his knee. The next blow was supposed to finish the battle that had begun and finish off the worker who could not fulfill his duty. For the father, it was truly an amazing sight, and as it turned out, now it will be very difficult for the waiter to continue working for the family. As soon as the battle was over, the guy immediately decided to call the police. He said over the phone that there was a pervert running not far from their house who was evading justice, which is why he needed to be apprehended immediately. Watching his son, the father was simply furious, because he did not understand why he called the police. In fact, the smart young man understood that it was time to say goodbye to such a criminal business once and for all, and the blame must be placed on the Tianhong Group. Starting from his generation, the Zhao family would only engage in honest and legal business. And with the help of high technologies stolen from the Zhao family, the guy was going to seize the championship and call a press conference, and the Zhao family would only have to kneel and beg for mercy. At the same time, Lin Fan was diligently looking for a way to also cool the dumplings made by the system. After making the 33rd plate, a new ability was finally revealed to him. This ability was called technogeny, and it was truly unusual. Thinking about all the geniuses who came up with many technologies, the young man realized that they all got rich thanks to technology, and since he now has this ability, he can also get rich this way. Perhaps very soon the main character will be able to become the president of a company whose shares will be traded on the market. But maybe he will not succeed too quickly, and will become the same as Jack Ma, who was indifferent to worldly affairs. Lin Fan decided to design a mechanism that would cool the dish, and the system praised him, because this ability, even at the first star, could greatly increase his intellectual abilities. A smart guy, with the help of a new ability, began to create something that he had not done before. Elder Zhao redirected a large number of workers, returned the dumpling shop to its former appearance in one night, and Lin Fan, in order not to reveal his system, asked his uncle and elder to wait outside for a while. As soon as the uncle and his daughter approached the dumpling shop, they immediately smelled the smell of delicious dumplings. The invention of the main character was truly unusual, because it consisted in the fact that a giant windmill was built. There was a huge wind generator outside, and inside for beauty he hid all the electrical wiring, and the electrical wire was directly connected to the fan in the kitchen. The rotation speed could reach 3,000 revolutions per minute. It was Lin Fan's own invention, which was a wind-powered electric fan. As long as there was wind, it would spin by itself. Unfortunately, this fan turned out to be quite useless because it could not cool the dumplings completely. The young man immediately began to complain about the system, because it was bullshit, not technical ability, but the artificial intelligence believed that at first there would be a lot of ideas, and in just over 10 minutes he made an electric generator, and it's very cool. Thus, the guy realized that this skill is a complete mess, and he can no longer spend skill points. That is why the young man began to think why the girl didn't get burned that time when she ate dumplings. Suddenly, the main character still understood what the girl's possible secret was while she was eating dumplings. The joyful boy began to call Elder Zhao, and told him to call all the girls here. Not understanding what was happening, all the girls arrived, and Lin Fan was happy to see them in the dumpling shop. One of the girls was perplexed, because she thought that they were first tricked into working at the club, and now he was also trying to trick them into working for free. The dissatisfied lady still wanted to know how she would be provided for without work. The smart guy smiled and said that he would provide for absolutely all the girls. These words surprised the girl very much, because she did not expect such a young guy to be capable of this. Expecting the reaction of his interlocutor, Lin Fan handed her some noodles, but the girl said that she would not eat it, because she was used to eating expensive delicacies and was not going to stoop to the level of some low-life dumplings. But all the other girls really wanted to try these delicious dumplings, which had an incredible smell. As soon as the girls decided to try the most delicious dumplings of their lives, they immediately had an unexpected reaction. Each of the girls was incredibly happy that she was able to try the delicious dish. But the girl with glasses did not understand the reaction of her colleagues, because she was used to eating expensive dishes that were completely different from dumplings. As a young man, I expected that dumplings of 3 flavors cooked on true fire have pronounced hot yang energy, and when girls blow their feminine cool energy on them, neutralization and a decrease in temperature occurs. The brave boy, with the help of his dexterity, was able to figure out how he would be able to provide for absolutely all the girls. At the same time, the police watched everything that was happening and were very surprised by the enthusiastic screams coming from the restaurant. The alarmed police officers realized that old Zhao had taken all the girls from the club and brought them to his dumpling shop. Strange sounds were coming from inside one after another. They could definitely be engaged in illegal activities there. Suddenly, someone came up and exclaimed that he had found out information about the guy from the club who took all the girls. This guy turned out to be the main character, and Wudenglin was really surprised that he was a student, and also lived in a dumpling shop. The girl felt very disgusted that she realized that a young student was doing something like that. After thinking a little, the captain ordered her subordinates not to relax, because now they must break into the restaurant and complete the mission they had begun. Some time later, the girls came out of the room and exclaimed that they had changed their clothes on Mr. Lin Fan's orders. Thus, the girls began to look simply impressive, and the elder was very glad that he had saved enough maid costumes. The girl with glasses was at a loss, because she thought that the concept of the establishment would be completely different. Others opened coffee shops with maids and this is glamorous, but they were going to open a dumpling shop with maids, and this is bad taste. Even my uncle didn't quite understand what the concept of this establishment was, but the main character still decided to tell him what it was all about. Since no cooling devices help, there is only one way left. These are girls who will blow and cool. This option is truly safe, since any girl can calmly cool the hottest dumplings. Therefore, the young man believed that they could simply hire them as workers who would be responsible for cooling the dumplings. With this idea they will solve the problem of burning dumplings and disadvantaged girls, as it will give them a new job which will make everyone happy and excited. The idea was really dubious, since my uncle began to doubt, because not every person would want someone to blow on the dumplings. The main character and the elder looked at his uncle and realized that he simply didn't know anything about eating incredibly tasty dumplings. Opening the door, the brave guy exclaimed that the restaurant of super delicious dumplings was open for the morning shift. Students were passing nearby and were talking about how Teacher Williams had participated in underground battles as a military department, and that he had been defeated there. One of the guys understood that yesterday Teacher William was bothering Lin Fan, and in the evening he himself became the hero of scandalous news. Suddenly, the plump guy noticed that a cafe had opened nearby that sold dumplings, but his interlocutor believed that only hillbillies eat dumplings for breakfast. But still, even the second guy wanted to eat dumplings, because he saw something that made him incredibly hungry. After all, the guys saw girls who were doing their best to cool the dumplings so that the guests could eat them. A benevolent uncle approached the guys and exclaimed that they could go inside the establishment and give them breakfast. He also said that they have a new cook in the restaurant. He makes simply delicious dumplings, but the fact is that they are very scalding, so they need special people to blow on them, and thereby cool them. Maybe this is a little unhygienic, but it's unusual. A little embarrassed and blushing, the boys stopped the man and exclaimed that they were happy with everything and were ready to try these dumplings. I don't understand what's happening. The guys sat down at the table, and incredibly beautiful girls immediately approached them with dumplings. One of the beauties began to cool the dumplings by blowing on them. Another beauty also did her best to keep the dumplings cool. For the guys, it was love at first sight, because they understood that they wanted to eat in this restaurant forever thanks to such service. As soon as the dumplings disappeared into the guys' mouths, they immediately felt an incredibly rich taste. This taste could not be compared with anything, like meat filling with corn and mushrooms in such ideal proportions as the Sagrada Familia temple of the great architect Antonio Gaudi. Another guy compared the taste to a rich thick broth that falls into the mouth with dumplings, splashes out, and this splash is like a symphony of the great Italian composer of the Baroque times. The taste was so delicious that it was simply impossible to tear yourself away from these dumplings, and you wanted to try even more. The obsessed young men again began to ask the girls for more, because they could no longer live without these dumplings. After 10 minutes, Uncle Lee was simply shocked by how many customers were in his restaurant. A huge number of people came to see a new product that was present in their city, namely a dumpling shop, where the service was incredibly unusual. Each client had an individual approach, and absolutely all the men were satisfied that they were served this way. This result made the owner of the establishment very happy, because he understood that in this way they would earn a huge amount of money. The joyful man immediately ran up to the hero and exclaimed that all the dumplings were sold out. 30 plates of dumplings were sold in just 10 minutes, and he usually sold that much in just a whole morning. The result was truly magnificent, and the young man did not doubt for a second that everything would work out. The frightened girl with glasses did not understand how this was possible, because it turns out that a dumpling shop with maids could be so successful. Now the boy needs to prepare even more dumplings, but he only asked everyone to turn away, because after all, this was their family recipe, which could not be revealed. Some time later, all the prepared dumplings were sold out again, and more needed to be prepared. For one participation in the lottery, 100 points were required. The probability is approximately that out of 10 plates of dumplings there will be one winning that is not dumplings, or in other words, the cost of one plate of dumplings is 102 points, and from one plate of dumplings you can get from the client approximately 200 points. That is, earn 100 net points, and if we assume that they sell 200 plates per day, then they can earn 20,000 net points per day. If they sell at 100 yuan per plate, 200 plates per day, then they can earn 12,000 yuan net, and this is already 360,000 per month. Half will also be spent on the girls' salaries. Then the annual revenue will be approximately 2 million. Feeling sincere joy, the boy decided to ask the system why it didn't give him a reward for completing the mission, but as it turned out, the mission was not finished yet. After all, the guy needed to find a new job for the disadvantaged girls, mainly because of Ruyan. The task was not completed, because she does not have a job. Thus, the young man began to understand that he might not complete this task, because he had 10 minutes left before finishing. The police were watching the restaurant at the same time and were shocked that a large number of people were heading inside to try the dish. The cunning police decided to launch a drone to check what was happening inside, because it was suspicious that there were so many people in front of the doors in a short period of time. Thanks to the drone, it was possible to track the flow of customers heading to the restaurant. Not far from the restaurant there was a girl who told her brothers and uncles to line up, because their dumpling shop with a maid was not working on the first day in test mode. One plate cost 100 yuan, and there would be a big discount with a student card. But as it turned out, during the wiretapping, the police heard that a night with a maid would cost 100 yuan. Having heard this, the men were simply shocked, because it was because of this, as it turned out, that there was a large crowd not far from the cafe, because it used lower prices. Police also heard that there would be a big discount on a student ID and a few nights each. Grabbing the machine gun in her hands, Wudenglen was very angry. After all, they dared to force little girls to give students a discount, and even for each of them a few nights. But the men really liked it, so they immediately wanted to head to the cafe to scout out the situation. Feeling intense anger towards the criminals, the police moved out to attack the villains in order to make an arrest. The policewoman pulled out a machine gun and dispersed the crowd, shouting that she would arrest everyone here now. The friendly restaurateurs gave the last portion of dumplings to the client, and were happy to serve a large number of people. But at that very second the police shouted that they had seen the main suspect, and they could not give him the opportunity to escape. Wudenglen ran closer and shouted that Lin Fan was arrested, and he has the right to remain silent. Everything he says can and will be used against him in court. This turn of events shocked everyone present, because no one could understand why exactly the young man was detained. For the customers, everything that was happening looked very strange, because at first glance everything in this cafe was legal. Worried customers were also shocked by what was happening because they did not understand why the police invaded the restaurant. Looking at everything that was happening, the men realized that they were probably mistaken after all. Some time later, the police captain made excuses to the hero, saying that they came here to check sanitary standards. But first, the guy still needed to go to the police station to testify in the case of the KTV club, and also, even though he saved the disadvantaged girls and found them a new job, but to what extent does it comply with the sanitary standards of using people in order for them to be on dumplings? This issue will also need to be checked. Suddenly, looking around, the police captain discovered that her subordinates were already eating dumplings, and not just one portion. Because of everything that was happening, the girls were excited, because they did not understand how serious this test was, but the elder realized that they had a difficult relationship with the captain's mother, and so he could ask for her leniency. Meanwhile, the girls were discussing that they earned much more in a day than in the club where they worked before. The girl with glasses also saw that the main character was trying to feed the captain dumplings, but she refused, because such dumplings did not interest her. That is why the smart girl decided to act differently and picked up a plate of dumplings. Immediately, colleagues realized that Ruyan decided to act differently, because although she was not the most beautiful in the club, she was the smartest. After all, in their previous work, the club usually attracted male clients, but little sister Ruyan not only knew how to approach men, but also women. Thus, thanks to her talent, Ruyan approached the officer and said that they worked very hard together making these dumplings, and offered to try them. The lady with glasses expressed pity and said that she had finally escaped the devilish clutches of this damned club, and just wanted to have an ordinary job, like everyone else, earning money for the treatment of her paralyzed mother. Blushing, Wudenglen admitted that these words would truly awaken the feelings in anyone. That is why the officer decided to try those same dumplings, because she realized that such a girl must be given a chance. As soon as Wudenglen tasted the dumplings, an unusual taste immediately appeared in her mouth, which was incomparable to anything. Thanks to the fact that the dumplings were finally tasted, the officer realized that this taste was impossible to tear away from, and she was simply captivated by this delicious taste. The taste of this dish was simply gorgeous, thanks to which Wudenglen ate everything in just a few seconds. Suddenly, the lady with glasses came closer to the officer and exclaimed that there was something on her face. It was dumpling crumbs that needed to be cleaned up urgently, causing Ruyan to cling to the officer and help her clean her face. With the help of such an unusual skill, the girl was easily able to work out her strategy, and now the officer was simply discouraged. The system notified the main character that the mission was completed, and at that time the young man was already running because he was starting to have trouble. Some time later, events continued to occur at the university. The teacher gave a lecture and said that no matter what specialty the students have, after all, everyone must have at least the 4th level of knowledge of English. The joyful boy, meanwhile, decided to ask the system to summarize the results of the mission. The system immediately notified the guy that while he was participating in the lottery in the dumpling shop, he discovered 3 more new abilities. One of them is called botany, the second is a master of slam dunk, and the third is a supernatural ability. The artificial intelligence also decided to show the guy a list of all the abilities he has. Due to the fact that he not only helped Ryan, but also the entire team of girls from the club, he receives an additional reward. Thanks to it, he will be able to further improve his abilities 2 times, or he will be able to add 1 star to the primary ability, or improve 1 secondary ability up to 100%. For example, Technogenium is a primary ability. It will be possible to increase it by 1 star at a time, but Slam Dunk is a secondary ability. It can be increased entirely at a time. The system also decided to congratulate the guy, since he got more than 10,000 points in a day. At the same time, the students were watching Lin Fan because he was acting very defiantly, and when he hit the desk, there was a strong wind. For the young man, this was truly surprising, but as it turned out, he had just discovered supernatural abilities, and was not yet used to controlling them. The angry teacher immediately started shouting at the guy, saying that if he didn't like something, he could leave the class. The embarrassed guy immediately got up from his desk and exclaimed that he had accidentally done it, after which he apologized to the teacher. Approaching closer, the teacher decided to check on his student and asked him what exactly the lecture was about. Suddenly, the young man realized that although he had not been paying attention to the lesson, everything was recorded in his mind, and he could literally watch the lecture again. Thus, after thinking a little, the boy told absolutely the entire content of the lecture that the teacher only managed to tell. Each of the students present was simply shocked, because they had never seen anything like this. Due to the fact that it was an English lesson, the young man began to speak English incredibly well, and he spoke in such a way that his speech was simply perfect. The teacher continued to listen to his student, and with his mouth open, he was amazed at what he was saying. As he began to leaf through the book, the young man realized that with one glance he could read literally 1,000 lines at a time. Meanwhile, events were happening in the corridor, and Xiao Chao was walking along with Xiao Mei Mei and talking to each other. The girl felt uneasy, because her brother said that she walked around all tense, as if she had fallen in love with that same Lin Fan. According to his brother, even though this little one knows a little kung fu, he can't compete with them, the guys from the military department, and his friend also said that his family is poor, and because of the constant work, instead of grades there are only 2 grades. Such people are no match for them, the members of the Xiao family, but if the girl didn't believe it, then they will go and have a look together, because they are currently taking an English test. Xiao Chao understood that even their family's watchmen speak English, but this Lin Fan is not even able to write a word in English. But in fact, at this time the main character was giving a lecture instead of a teacher, and explained exactly how certain words were read. After this turn of events, Xiao Mei Mei fell even more in love with this guy because she did not expect him to be so smart. Lin Fan could read even the most difficult words that the teacher himself could not read, but he did it with ease and taught how students can do something like this. All the students began to approach the main character and ask him how he learned English so perfectly. But the guy responded that he didn't know what kind of vocabulary he had, there was little time, and he had only learned half of the Oxford Dictionary. The worried teacher could not understand how this is possible, because at the 8th professional level there are no more than 10,000 words, on the postgraduate test there are no more than 30,000 words, and half of the Oxford Dictionary already has more than 150,000 words. The joyful man immediately invited the main character to take the 8th professional level of English, and he himself was going to pay for this course, because with his abilities he would definitely get the highest scores, and perhaps even be able to enter Harvard. This was truly unusual, because the young man just leafed through this dictionary, pausing on the pages for less than 0.01 seconds, and even so he was able to remember so much. But if he goes to the library and leafs through all the books there, he will become an expert on everything from antiquity to modern times, and also a master of all techniques and sciences. This is how he will be cooler than all teachers. The boy decided to go further to the library to study a few more books there. Suddenly, someone decided to stop Lin Fan and turned to him. The excited guy noticed that Xiao Mei Mei stopped him. The girl immediately began to push away all the students, because her visit did not concern them, and the guys all the time admired the second beauty of the school. Blushing, the little sister explained that today there would be an international final match at the military faculty, and her little brother had not had breakfast early and fell unconscious. He needed to be replaced, and Lin Fan was perfect. Such a request caused alarm in the young man, because he understood that he was not a member of the military faculty, but the girl was the captain of the team. Only her consent was required. Thus, the hero realized that there are usually a lot of people at the final matches, and they are also broadcast on TV, and then he recently received an ability called the Slam Dunk Master, and this is a great opportunity to earn a lot of points. The guy looks just great in a basketball uniform, and now he will be able to show off his skills in full to a large audience. Some time later, events continued to occur in the Physical Education Hall of Shenzhou University. To Lin Fan's surprise, the classes were supposed to be volleyball, which shocked him greatly. Lin Fan's ex-girlfriend didn't understand why this guy was invited here, because she didn't even want to see him. Xiao Mei Mei decided to tell her that her boyfriend lost consciousness, so she brought this guy as a replacement, because she is the captain here and has the right to do so. Suddenly, someone else came up and exclaimed that she thought that Xiao Mei Mei's team was worthless. She was a very strange girl who looked like a man, and even men could not compare with her, because it was an accident that they made it to the finals, and very soon her team would have victory. The self-confident girl sincerely believed that this year she would definitely be able to get the championship cup against such a team. The match began and the referee exclaimed that today the Chinese team will fight against the American team. Meanwhile, the main character was trying to remember how to still stand in volleyball. As it turned out, the guy's comrades and his uncle were watching everything that was happening, and they understood that Lin Fan had never played volleyball before. At this time, Xiao Mei Mei was thinking that she was not some dumbass from someone else's harem, and preferred guys who were superior to her in everything. And if her lover shows, in addition to wushu and studies, excellent skills in playing volleyball, then it will be just wonderful. All the spectators enthusiastically watched the match, and saw that there would be many celebrities here today, and whoever wins today, members of that team will be divided into their teams by different countries tomorrow. The American team has become champions for 3 years in a row, but today there will be a fierce battle. After all, everyone knew that the American team had another trump up its sleeve, which they had never pulled out until now. The volleyball match began, and the American team immediately scored the first goal with a serve. This sight shocked the protagonist's comrades, because they did not understand how this was possible. Unfortunately, the strongest receiver in the Chinese team, Bei Sanqi, was unable to receive the ball, to everyone's surprise. It is not for nothing that they say that American Jones has the most difficult serves to receive. Her giant whale serve is incomparable in power, and was called a nightmare by her opponents. The concerned young man immediately ran up to the girl and decided to ask if she was okay. The team captain immediately pacified the guy and ordered him not to leave his place. Taking advantage of the confusion in the ranks of the Chinese team, the Americans began their attack again. The alarmed judges saw that the Chinese team was not even trying to defend themselves. The intense competition continued, and Lin Fan did his best to accept the serve. All this time the young man was thinking that in both boxing and basketball, speed of movement is important. Different sports often overlap with each other, and he took this ball upon himself. But as it turned out, the boy didn't know the rules, and he accidentally caught a ball that was flying right at him. Absolutely all the spectators of this match were shocked by this turn of events, because they did not expect such a game from a professional. Although at that moment the guy received a large number of points, he still made a fatal mistake, and now it was already 2 o'clock in favor of the American team. For the Chinese team it was a shame, because according to the rules it was forbidden to catch the ball in your hands, and the American referee mocked the Chinese. The guy's uncle and comrades were also very ashamed, because in this way they realized that Lin Fan was a complete ignoramus at volleyball. Only the team captain believed in the guy, thinking that he was very cool. To the surprise of the young man, the American opponents were still very surprised, because no one could have expected that their opponent would be able to accept such a strong serve. Coming closer to her ally, the team captain began to explain to him that in volleyball you cannot catch the ball, and this is a violation of the rules. Meanwhile, the boy was thinking that although the supernatural force made it possible to easily take the ball, but the body automatically grabbed it, it was very sad that there was no special skill in basketball. The opponent noticed that Lin Fan easily accepted the strong serve, which is why the woman decided to use all her strength to serve the ball as hard as possible. The allied Chinese team decided to change positions, and the main character moved to the back line, while his ex-girlfriend became the setter, and the team captain was the forward. If you controlled yourself well, then the guy still had the opportunity to hit the ball, and there was a chance of victory. The opponents were simply shocked by this turn of events, because their American enemies were able to accept the serve, which was served with incredible force. The commentator exclaimed that the Chinese team has a chance because they are launching a counterattack. Main striker Xiao Mei takes off and is about to use her signature move. This blow was unusual because it was used using a karate technique. The incredibly strong blow was made thanks to the techniques taught in karate, which made it possible to gain an advantage. The American team's defender was very strong, which is why he easily hit the ball. To everyone's surprise, the attacker from the Chinese team was easily blocked by Brittany's player. The difference in height and physical fitness was too obvious. Brittany started laughing loudly and mocked the girl, saying that her blow was simply worthless. Because of this, the girls immediately began to panic, and discussed among themselves how it was still possible to beat the American team. After thinking a little, the young man finally realized that the difference lies precisely in height and physical fitness. That is, if you jump high enough, exert enough force, and hit the ball into the opponent's field, they will easily win the next ball. Some time later, the heroes hit the ball too hard, which allowed the opponent to earn another point. Meanwhile, Brittany decided to use her strongest move and used the American Angel Punch. Watching the secret technique, the girls were simply shocked, and immediately realized that they needed to use all their defense methods to win. At this time, the young man decided to intervene in the serve and intercept the ball, which was flying at incredible speed. With all her might, Brittany tried to jump incredibly high, but watched as she was outmaneuvered. After all, this jump on the part of the main character was truly unusual, because it was used only in basketball. Unfortunately, while jumping, Lin Fan accidentally caught on the net, and gradually began to fall. Feeling very awkward, the boy fell straight onto his opponent. Watching everything that was happening, the judges were simply shocked, because they had never seen anything like this before. The moment of his fall was indeed unusual, because Lin Fan fell directly onto the American enemy. Lin Fan crossed the line of what was permitted. Touching the net and crashing into a player was prohibited, thereby he severely violated the rules, for which he received a warning yellow card. The opponents were also indignant because they saw that this impudent man dared to pester the beauty, because of which they were going to smear him on the wall. The American team nevertheless decided to ask for a timeout in order to rest a little. At the same time, one of his comrades thought that Lin Fan was very lucky, because he just liked such fair-haired beauties. Some time later, the judges decided to watch the recording, which clearly showed what exactly the guy did. The footage showed how great Lin Fan's jumping ability was, which was simply impressive. The height of the volleyball net was 243 m, which means this guy jumped at least 2 m into the air. Perhaps the judges became unwitting eyewitnesses of the new volleyball star. The judges also noticed that one of the Chinese team members was not feeling well, and it looked like he had an upset stomach. Xiao Mei at this time was thinking that Lin Fan is really very cool, and he jumps incredibly high. In the eyes of the team captain, this guy was truly a fierce warrior who was supposed to defeat the Americans. Having come to his senses, the young man only thought that he could no longer touch the net or go beyond its borders. Having disgraced himself, he, of course, could also earn a lot of points, but he was afraid that at school then even eating in the cafeteria would be a problem, because he would be bullied because he lost to the Americans. Turning to his allies, the boy asked for a phone number in order to Google the rules of volleyball. Without hesitation, the team captain handed over her phone so that Lin Fan could read the rules and not break them again. Literally a few seconds later, the main character had already become familiar with absolutely all the rules of volleyball and was ready to play. Xiao Mei was simply shocked by such a speed of reading, because looking at his game, it seemed that he usually played a lot of volleyball. Even the skills of scoring and receiving the ball were very different from basketball, but passing was about the same. That is why the team captain was able to find out that the guy fits the requirement for a passer more, which is why he needs to direct the ball to the captain, and she will score. This tactic had to work because this way they could potentially win. In this case, it was necessary to find out who exactly would receive the ball. The wounded girl shouted that although she hates Lin Fan, they hate Americans even more, so she will take all the balls. A few seconds later the break was over and the match continued. Student Bai from the Chinese team had difficulty accepting the giant Whale Jones serve. Xiao Mei was running away from the opposing team's defenders, but at the same time she was too far from her setter. Jumping with all her might, the girl shouted for the guy to pass the ball to her. At such a long distance it was very difficult to pass the ball for further attack, but the hero was confident in himself and was obliged to hit. Hitting the ball with all his might, Lin Fan hit his ally directly, because he used supernatural strength. From such a strong blow, the girl immediately fell to the floor and almost lost consciousness. Feeling awkward, the young man tried to justify himself and said that he had not calculated his strength, and Xiao Mei thought that he just wanted to get to know her better. The Chinese team spent the rest of the match under severe pressure. It seemed that they did not have a single chance to strike back. A large number of goals were conceded by the Chinese team, which made the victory difficult. The first half was finally over, and the Chinese team lost it without a single goal, as if it was a beating. Trying to rest after the first half, Lin Fan and his team realized that there was no return game at all. The smart guy decided to ask the system what he should do in this situation, and the system said that 1 star of the Slam Dunk Master ability can be compared with one manga about the Sakura military team from the human world. Its level is similar to their initial level, when he has excellent abilities, but he has not yet learned to fully control them. The American team mocked the Chinese and shouted that they would also lose the second half without a single goal, like garbage that was incapable of anything. After thinking a little, the young man made a decision and ordered the system to add additional ability points to the Slam Dunk Master. The boy also decided to warn the captain of his team, and said that in the next game he would be a striker. The young man also asked not to argue with him, because he just wanted to win this game. This turn of events for the lady was incredibly impressive, and she immediately blushed, because she did not expect to be spoken to like that. The self-confident protagonist and his team were ready for the second half, and were now about to launch a counterattack. Second half, and it was finally the Chinese team's turn to serve the ball. Each of the main characters' friends present tried to shout at him to play better and win back. Unfortunately, without a hint of confusion, the American team easily accepted the ball. A wonderful long pass was also made, with Brittany running straight towards Team China's exposed area to make an attack there. Shortly after this, another of Brittany's signature moves was used, called Moon Power. The attack sequence was really impressive, and it was noticeable that the main character was making great efforts to defend himself. But as it turned out, Lin Fan's attack could be much stronger than that of the American enemy. Thanks to his unusual blocking of the blow, the guy was easily able to repel the attack, but he did it with his face. The ball hit the field, which gave the Chinese team an opportunity to score a goal. This outcome of events made the young man very happy, because he understood that now it was possible to score more points in this way. Lin Fan scored the kick with his unimaginable face, thereby bringing his team the first point. He still managed to make the score positive. According to the judges, this guy was just a genius because he jumped like a rocket. The guy's allies began to worry about him, but he was completely fine, although it seemed that Brittany's Moon Power strike had unusual power. At the same time, the enemies also realized that this guy is not only super fast, but can also take a blow with his face. The opposing team's defender decided to act and exclaimed that the next ball should be given to her, because her technique is just right for countering people like him who rely solely on physical strength. The next serve followed, and the Chinese team tried with all their might to score another goal. The next blow was Anna's, and she used an unusual attack called a whirlwind strike. Anna really showed a very technical shot and sent the ball straight to the opponent's field. But this attack turned out to be absolutely useless, since the wushu style was used against it to receive the ball. The Chinese team setter is now Xiao Mei Mei, and the main striker is now Lin Fan, and all the spectators hoped that this guy could surprise them again. Looking at everything that was happening, Anna was simply shocked, because she did not expect that the enemy was capable of something like that. After the next serve, the ball literally began to spin in the air and spin wildly. Unfortunately, due to the special throwing technique, the ball simply flew out of the setter's hands. There was absolutely no one at the place where the ball fell, and now it was a small matter, because it was necessary to score a goal. All this time, Anna understood that no one could fight off her whirlwind strike, and there was not even anything to cover it with. In fact, the American opponents were wrong because the Chinese team had Lin Fan, who could easily hit the ball. Using his magical abilities, the young man used an unusual blow, which had the name, "Go to your grandfather." The force of the blow was simply unimaginable, because the speed at which the ball moved impressed absolutely everyone. Thanks to such an unusual return of the ball, they managed to score a goal again, and the Chinese team already earned 2 points. The ball flew at such high speed that even Anna's hair was damaged. Lin Fan once again demonstrated a lightning-fast, gram-like blow, as well as amazing jumping ability. The next points again went to the Chinese team, and each of the spectators understood that they were fighting with dignity. Starting to cry, Anna was nervous because her hair was badly damaged and now she could not play as before. The Americans immediately realized that this blow was much stronger than Britney's. The team captain could not believe that the hero was the best at hitting, and now he would be a striker. The girl even promised to pass absolutely all the balls to him. Together they were going to finish off their enemy, and they wanted to do everything possible for this. Some time later, Lin Fan once again used his devastating blow. It even seemed to the judges that this was simply impossible, because the Chinese team, even the three of them, were unable to withstand Lin Fan's blow. Nothing should have stopped the main character, as if it were some kind of superhuman power. Thus came the end of the second half, and this time the American team was losing. The young man and his team were incredibly happy, because they understood that in this way they had made a comeback. All this time, the match was filmed on camera, and a large number of viewers watched the progress of the significant event on TV. Some spectators in masks discussed among themselves that the Americans must definitely win this competition. One of the scoundrels ordered a request to be made to Anonymous so that they would find out everything about this Lin Fan, and as soon as the match was over, he had to be captured. The masked stranger suddenly remembered that somewhere he had heard this name of the main character. Some time later, events continued to occur at the competition site. The volleyball match at the Faculty of Military Education is held on the 3-time principle, your victories. At the moment each team has won once. The match will now enter its final phase, and the decisive period will begin. The Chinese commentators were worried about the American commentator, because he was simply in shock, so he couldn't close his mouth. After all, it's not every day that you see some unknown guy giving the American team a hard time. The men also discussed that Lin Fan would be very famous after the match, and they should prepare to interview him, as well as his teachers and classmates. The main character's devoted friends began to run up to the commentators and shouted that they were his best friends. At this time, the American team was indignant, because they did not understand where this boy came from. Suddenly, someone approached Anna and asked her to rest, because he was going to replace her. The mysterious opponent became interested in conducting this battle, because he had an interesting opponent in the form of Lin Fan. And Charles, who was the secret defender of the American team, wanted to warm up at least a little. Seeing the secret player, the commentators immediately began to rejoice, because he was entering the field, America's secret weapon, Charles, who had never appeared on the field before. Now the main character and his team could not understand what other surprises the enemy had prepared for them. To the surprise of the protagonist's allies, their opponent was very tall, at least 2 m tall. A determined Charles shouted to Lin Fan that he would not get a single point this time. After all, when the guy attacks, Charles will definitely receive, and if he scores at least 1 point, then the hero will win. The alarmed young man could not understand what all this meant, because the enemy spoke to him rather strangely. But at this time the match began, and Team America was serving. One of the opponents again used the giant whale attack performed by Jones. Baiseki took the giant whale's serve with difficulty and passed the ball to Lin Fan, who was already ready to score another goal. A secret blow was used again called, "You went to your grandfather." Thanks to the strongest attack, the ball began to fly at incredible speed, and flew right near Charles. As it turned out, the enemy was much stronger, and was easily able to run up to this ball, catching up with it, after which he blocked the attack. These skills were truly impressive, and the protagonist was very surprised. Thanks to his agility and strength, Charles was able to hit the ball and did not even get tired of such fast movements. The American team earned another point. Even the commentators did not understand what had just happened. A few seconds later, the main character realized that the enemy was much stronger than him. Thus, the guy managed to discover that Charles has a rare supernatural body, but this is his passive ability. No matter how he hits the ball, all his hits will be absorbed by his superpowers called the super reception sphere. There is no ball that he could not receive, which is why he is the best receiver. To Lin Fan's surprise, he realized that such abilities exist. The trajectory of the ball again mysteriously changed, and Lin Fan's blow was again accepted by Charles. As long as the American team had Charles, they were doomed to win, and now they wanted revenge on the Chinese team. Fortunately, the main character was easily able to compete with the opponents he initially fought. Using his magical abilities, the young man decided to use a mystical protection grid. But unfortunately, this ability did not work, and Lin Fan was unable to block the ball, which is why another point was earned by the American team. Looking at his hands, the boy could not understand why at the most crucial moment he could not move. Looking at the podium, he realized that it seemed like he had already seen similar abilities somewhere. And this was really so, because all this time the enemy interfered with him and used Taoist magic to control people. Looking at his enemy, Lin Fan realized that this was Zhu Ke, and he used the technique of controlling people, but it was completely unclear how he got here. The enemies continued to put pressure on the young man, and he began to think about the next plan to achieve victory. After thinking a little, the boy discovered that Zhu Ke was most likely in cahoots with the enemies, and they were using vile tricks. Also, there was a disaster on the volleyball field, and the moon punch hit Xiao Mei directly on the leg, and it seemed that the injury was severe, so it was unknown whether she would be able to continue playing further. Touching the girl's leg, the young man exclaimed that he should not worry, because he was nearby. Initially, the boy decided to take off her shoes in order to perform a magic trick. Confused, Xiao Mei still decided to trust her ally, because she understood that she needed to continue playing for her team. Using acupuncture techniques, the protagonist used a healing massage to relax tendons and muscles. This massage was really very pleasant, and the girl immediately blushed with pleasure. Suddenly, the girl remembered how her father beat her for scratching her brother. Her father even called her a dog and ordered her not to touch her brother, because if she did it again, he could take away absolutely all the toys. The man shouted at his wife and blamed her for this, because he asked her to give birth to another boy, and she gave birth to this girl, and for him it was a mockery. Pointing his finger at Xiao Mei, the father shouted, so that she quickly clean up after herself, and her brother still has to inherit the family matter, and marks on the face can ruin the family's reputation. Suffering such abuse, the girl hated her younger brother because she always received punishment because of him. It was at that moment that the lady realized what her role as a woman would be in the family. Born into a family of a large entrepreneur, where the father is like a king, and the family business is transferred to the prince, and all that remains for her is to dress more beautifully and get married. Xiao Mei realized that she would not inherit any family property, and after leaving home, she would have absolutely nothing. Therefore, she has only one thing left, to try to become stronger than her brothers, much stronger, and she will not cry anymore, because she will not expect compassion from people, no matter how hard it is, be it exams, sparring, or sports. It was at that second that the girl decided for herself that she would always win, and she would use absolutely all methods for this. At that moment, the little girl realized that the goal of her life was to prove that she was much stronger than any man. Suddenly, the lady came to her senses and did not understand why she suddenly remembered a story from her childhood. The protagonist's ally really didn't understand what was happening to her, and why she thought about this during the fight. At the same time, the good-natured guy already gave her a massage, and exclaimed that she should not worry while he was around, because they would definitely win. These words made Xiao Mei cry with happiness because she was happy to be with such a man. Watching the girl, the young man immediately began to worry, because he thought that he had hurt her, which is why she began to cry. Xiao Mei only exclaimed that eating did not hurt at all, and on the contrary, it was even very pleasant. Some time later, the team decided to go on a counterattack in order to win this game. The protagonist's ex-girlfriend didn't understand why Xiao Mei's injury went away so quickly, as if Lin Fan had given her a magical massage. That is why the girl decided to turn to her ex-boyfriend and said that her hand hurt, because of which she would not be able to play normally. To this the hero only replied that he would be happy to help accept a serve from the opponent if she could not do this. The lady immediately had a reaction that caused her to be very disgusted with the guy because he didn't react the way she expected. Suddenly, a few seconds later, the ball was served again by the American team, and a giant whale served. Although Bai Shiqi successfully received the serve, she actually looked very exhausted and tired. The opponents really saw that the girl was already at the limit and she couldn't hold on like this for long. If this time the Chinese team failed to win the right to serve, the judges were afraid that they would no longer be able to withstand the next blow. Using his magical abilities, Charles said that neither the trajectory nor the force of the blow was important to him. In his eyes, all this was just unnecessary vanity. The frightened Xiao Mei realized that the enemy was much stronger, and the enemy still had not shown the strength of his blow, but the hero exclaimed that the team commander would trust him. After thinking a little, the main character realized that if his opponent is the strongest receiver, then in that case he will be the strongest attacker. The ball was already flying onto the field towards the Chinese team and the guy was ready to receive it. Lin Fan's comrades cheered for him with all their might and wanted him to win the competition. Even the judges wanted the Chinese team to win and show what the Chinese are capable of. The smart captain of the team used an unusual technique called the Flying Hermit Strike. Xiao Mei really showed great skill as a setter and spins the ball with speed, making it even more difficult for the opposing team to take the ball. Suddenly, Zhu Ke again decided to use the technique of manipulating people, because even for such a defender as Charles, this was not a problem, but as the authorities say, it is better to play it safe just in case. Thus, after a few seconds, Lin Fan realized that he could not move again, and he was now in a difficult situation. Using all his power, the young man used a 5-star slam dunk master and also used a 1-star supernatural power ability. This guy was so strong that he could easily get out of incredibly strong magic. For a scoundrel, this skill was truly amazing, because he would never have thought that anyone could break out of his magic. The opposing American team did not understand what the main character was talking about, but still intended to defend themselves so that they would not score a goal. During the strike, the guy also decided to level up his skill using the system, and used the remaining points to level up his supernatural powers. Lin Fan indeed jumped very high. Having failed twice, he wanted to strike again. The first milestone on his way was a double closure from the American team. Using supernatural abilities, Lin Fan tried with all his might to break through the enemy team's blockade. And he succeeded because he was much stronger than the American girls, who were ignoramuses in volleyball. At this time, the ball should have already landed on the enemy's field, but as it turned out, it began to spin and immediately hit the Chinese team's field. For Charles, this was a mere trifle, and he exclaimed to the guy that he could try as much as he wanted, but he wouldn't succeed. Suddenly, the ball hit Charles directly on the head, who was gloating as he took another hit. The blow to the head with the ball was really very strong, which is why the guy even gradually began to fall to the floor. Each of the spectators present was simply shocked by what was happening, because no one could expect that Lin Fan would be able to win in this way. In severe pain, Charles literally began to roll around the volleyball field and screamed from the force of the blow. The opposing team decided to get closer to their ally and wanted to find out from him how he was feeling. The crowd of people began chanting the name of the main character, because no one could believe that he had gathered all his strength together and dealt a blow that even Charles could not take. The blow was indeed very cool. Even the teacher of the Faculty of Military Education did not have such power. That is why the allies could not understand how Lin Fan managed to train so quickly. Meanwhile, Charles gradually began to stand up. He was shaking in pain, but said that he was really interested in the battle. The enemy even praised the protagonist and told him that his punch was indeed a little strong. That is why Charles from the American team realized that he had found an equal opponent. Although a few seconds later the ball again flew straight at the guy's head, and he was once again unable to take Lin Fan's blow. Charles's Orbs of Acceptance is a passive ability, and no matter where the ball is directed, it will still fly to Charles. But at this time the ability did not work at all, and all the balls that were circling around the field flew straight into Charles's head, and he begged to stop all this. The strongest player of the Chinese team missed many shots. Even the strongest magician Zhu Ke could not prevent Lin Fan from winning, because just recently he could easily control him, but now it was simply impossible. Each time Charles was hit in the head with the ball, and it even seemed to the judges that this was threatening the player's life. Thanks to him, the Chinese team, after a series of blows, never received points. It was not for nothing that this guy was called the strongest defender. The frightened American team lifted Charles up and shouted that they would never let the Chinese team score another goal. The guy's immobilized body was used as a shield, and the girls tried to hit the ball in this way. The ball hit by Lin Fan was like being bombarded with super powerful bombs. At this time, the American team, on the contrary, was very similar to the military, who are trying with all their might to protect themselves from the bombing. The guy's follow-up punch was called "How's Your Grandpa Doing?" and it was the strongest in his arsenal. This blow went straight to Charles, who was already unconscious, but still defending his part of the field. Unfortunately, during the subsequent blow, the guy's body simply flew off, and he could no longer defend his half. The ball hit was really so strong that it even broke through the wall of the stadium. During such a crushing blow, Xiao Mei even decided to hug the guy, and thus show him how cool he really is. At this time, Zhu Ke watched everything that was happening and was indignant because his powers were now weak compared to the powers of the hero. Using his magical abilities, the enemy began to think that his opponent was becoming much stronger, and it seemed that he could not wait 10 days, and it was necessary to get down to business as soon as possible. Thus, thanks to the efforts of the Chinese team, they achieved victory and beat the strongest American team. Each of those present thought the main character was incredibly cool, and everyone was surprised that the student had hidden his talent for so long. The joyful team captain also began to hug the guy and shouted that she was very grateful to him. For the girl, this victory in the match was very important, which is why she was going to invite the young man to her home for dinner in order to thank him. But this was also surprising for the audience, since the team captain was the second beauty of the school, and invited Lin Fan to her home. Suddenly, the girl turned around and shouted at the losers to quickly shut up. Thanks to this victory, the guy realized that he was right in coming to this match, and earned a large number of points, as well as respect from people. Classmates really began to treat the guy better, and now it was clear that in order to earn a large number of points, as many people as possible were needed. The ex-girlfriend also began to resent the fact that she lost Lin Fan, because he did not behave like this before, and did not have such skills as he does now. She also felt uneasy when she thought that Lin Fan and her could become part of the Xiao family. That is why the determined lady wanted to go and separate Xiao Mei from the hero, because in this way she would win and would not be jealous of her. But commentators and analysts didn't care about this at all, and they immediately rushed to the young man and the team captain to interview them. The American correspondent congratulated the young man on the fact that he managed to perform a real miracle and asked him to tell him what it felt like after he became a champion and won the cup from his opponent. The young man at that moment did not even know what to answer, because he felt quite awkward. Coming closer, the team captain told him that he needed to say at least some nonsense. And when Lin Fan was asked whether it was difficult for him to play against Charles, the hero only asked who this Charles was. Thus, the enemy realized that this is what happens when you don't introduce yourself on time. Having answered the question in this way, the boy saw that he had been awarded a huge number of points. Soon after, he realized it was a television interview and it was being broadcast around the world. This turn of events really surprised the guy, because he did not expect that he would become popular throughout the world. The correspondents also decided to ask the winner how he usually trains, but Lin Fan did not want to answer this question. The man clearly did not expect such an answer, because they usually tell him how the training is carried out. The second correspondent decided to ask what the guy's plans were for the near future, and whether he planned to join a professional volleyball team. Laughing, the young man said that this was his first time playing volleyball, but it seemed like a very interesting activity, so he plans to continue training and become a champion in basketball. This answer made the commentators even more nervous, because they did not expect that a member of the Chinese volleyball team was playing for the first time. In this case, the next correspondent asked the young man if he would like to say hello or thank someone for his victory. After thinking for a while, Lin Fan replied that he would like to thank the super delicious dumpling shop. This dumpling shop is located to the left of the southern gate of the university. Their dumplings are the best in the country. They have very attentive waiters. After eating their dumplings, his lower back stopped hurting, and his legs and feet became much more mobile, and then one day he decided to play volleyball, and the result was noticeable immediately. The score indicators grew at an incredible pace, and now Lin Fan could buy literally any skill from the system. According to commentators, the young man simply blatantly made an advertisement, and they really didn't like it. But Xiao Mei reacted negatively to this behavior and was unhappy that her man was being talked to like that. At the same time, someone was about to push through the crowd to say something. As it turned out, it was the teacher who told the student that he should rather go to the rector. Some time later, events continued to occur in the rector's office. The man was very happy that the team from their university won the international volleyball match, and now they not only glorified their university, but also added merit to their country. The rector also decided to find out why only 2 team members arrived, because there were 3 in total, but as it turned out, the third member was difficult to find, so the teacher asked at least 2 to arrive. The good-natured head of the university decided to tell him that the English teacher told him that Lin Fan's English level was brilliant, and his performance at the volleyball match was simply amazing. In this regard, everyone believed that he could enter the Faculty of Military Education and receive elite first-class education there. This news was simply shocking, and the hero did not expect such a turn of events, because he did not believe that this happened. Although he had a system, he didn't seem to intend to enroll in military education, but in this way he could achieve a higher position in society, and in the future he could occupy leading military positions. Who knows, maybe this would really help him find the reason's father's disappearance. Laughing, the man decided to calm the teenager down a little and said that the affairs of the military faculty are decided at the state level, and his vote does not decide anything. In order to be admitted, he will have to participate in the annual exam, which will take place just next week. Also, the rector decided to find out the opinion of the teachers about Lin Fan's admission to the military faculty. The English teacher was able to say without a grain of doubt that Lin Fan's level of English was superior to that of any student at the military department, and maybe even in the country. The head of the Department of Veterinary Medicine said that he agreed, although he understood that Lin Fan usually studied so, but it seems that he has a relationship with the daughter of the Xiao family, and he decided to agree. Suddenly, the third teacher shouted that they were simply exaggerating the guy's merits. The girl went over Lin Fan's case, and his grades were average throughout his studies, including English. That is why it is not clear how it turns out that he became a genius in his senior year. The smart guy decided to tell him that he simply wasn't showing off all this time. From childhood, his father taught him to have a realistic approach to his studies. The English teacher reassured the students and told them that they should choose their words before talking to the woman because she is the deputy head of the military education department. The main character's file also stated that his father abandoned his family when he was still in high school, and this was a classic example of lack of home education, which is why one should not be surprised at his addiction to praising himself. From these words, Lin Fan simply began to tremble with anger, and would like to say everything that he was thinking. The angry guy asked the woman who she was, and since she was a teacher, what did she teach him? Pointing to his teachers, he said that they are his real teachers. He always respected them, but the woman does not give him a single reason to respect her. The scoundrel could not believe that a student dared to talk to her like that. A student with such a bad temper had no business being in their faculty, and she, being the deputy head, was against Lin Fan's participation in enrolling in their faculty. Experiencing strong rage, the guy shouted that his temper shouldn't bother a woman, and he doesn't value joining their stupid faculty at all. It's better that he graduates early and earns money. But according to the woman, no matter what this guy's level of English is, it's not the military faculty that selects the well-rounded elite, so he's definitely not going to get anywhere. Suddenly, Xiao Mei exclaimed that in this case, let this student take the exam, let him really try. The girl's family is a member of the university board, plus the rector and 2 teachers from regular faculties. They all agree to Lin Fan passing the exam, hence the 4 votes to 1. Feeling strong anger towards the student, the woman shouted that as long as the head of the faculty is in place, it makes absolutely no difference how many votes they have. Suddenly, the woman decided to come closer and exclaimed to the hero that she would still allow him to participate in the exam, realizing that he would not pass it. Having disappeared from the place where the events took place, the woman finally shouted that he might also get injured, which is why she couldn't wait for the exam. Sighing heavily, the rector only realized how dangerous this guy was and what awaited him next. Some time later, the main character and Xiao Mei Mei were walking in the park and were embarrassed with awkwardness. All this time, they were being watched by their comrades, who were thinking about whether Xiao Mei Mei really fell in love with Lin Fan. The boy was really very embarrassed because he didn't understand why the girl was following him all the time. Come to think of it, despite her assertiveness, she still ranks second in beauty in their university. Suddenly, the lady decided to apologize because she had dragged her interlocutor into a difficult situation. After all, because of her, the hero will have to confront their deputy dean, named Black Apple. In general, very rarely anyone dared to challenge her. When someone saw her, they immediately began to be afraid. Watching everything that was happening, brother Xiao Mei Mei only heard that his sister was trembling all over when she saw the young man. Because of this, the brother felt very bad, because he understood that his sister really fell in love with this guy. At the same time, the boy heard someone crying nearby, and it was really very strange. Xiao Mei Mei also decided to find out what her interlocutor thought about going to her house for dinner as a thank you, and then they could go to her room and study for the exam. Feeling awkward, Lin Fan said that he was not feeling well today, and would like to meet next time. After all, he destroyed the underground fights and the KTV club that belonged to her family. Going to visit them is like sticking your head into the mouth of a tiger. And a lot of points were also earned for leveling up skills in the system, which is why it is necessary to completely understand and take a break. The hero also thought that Zhuke showed up before the appointed 10-day deadline, which is why he was completely confused. From what the young man knew, it follows that the map of the dragon's territory is closely connected with the disappearance of his father, but he has no idea what it looks like, so there is no chance of finding it yet. Therefore, Elder Zhao's support is very important to him, although he can understand what exactly he will need to look for. Suddenly, the girl came closer and hugged the young man, after which she said that he still promised to come to her house someday. Suddenly, a huge black limousine pulled up nearby. It turned out that it was the Zhang family's driver, and he said that the chairman wanted to discuss something with Lin Fan. In this regard, the young man immediately climbed into the car, after which he began to drive to the Zhang family's estate. For Xiao Mei Mei, this was truly unusual because she could not even imagine that Lin Fan was such an important person. Some time later, in the car, the system exclaimed that Xiao Mei Mei was also quite an attractive girl, but the young man did not understand the purpose of such talk. After all, he keeps wondering what happened then, because there are a lot of inconsistencies, including the disappearance of his father, and the fact that the army turned a blind eye to it. But why did Xian suddenly talk about this? Who has the resources to hide a national treasure worth hundreds of millions of dollars? The hero was sure that the map of the dragon's territory and his father were different parts of the same story. That is why the guy decided to ask the system if it knew where the dragon map was now, and the artificial intelligence notified that it would now look at the information in its database. And yet, thanks to artificial intelligence, the dragon card was found, but it was carefully hidden. Information about the dragon map was indeed present in the database, but the system could not overcome these 5 levels of secrecy, the level of encryption that encodes the greatest secrets of the universe. In this regard, it was not surprising that everyone was so chasing this dragon card, and apparently this is something truly priceless. If the hero's father got such a treasure, then naturally the hunt began for him, and he does not know whether he could survive in such situation. There was also another moment that really worried the guy, and was quite unusual. The madam from the club greeted the protagonist's system, telling him to say hi to her. But according to the system, it was obvious that the girl could not independently find out this information from someone. And the artificial intelligence was also wondering who this girl was, because he could not detect her heartbeat and scan her combat skills. This had never happened before, and the system could not even determine the status of this person, which is why she could be dangerous. However, all this is somehow connected with the dragon card, and the guy urgently needed to gain the full trust of Elder Zhao so that he would show him what kind of card it was and what it looked like. Unexpectedly, the system congratulated its owner on the fact that he had already accumulated 312,000 points, and there were also a large number of skills that could be improved. Having started to think, the young man realized that 300,000 points is a huge amount, and he must think carefully about how exactly to distribute them. It is best to use them to confront comrades like Zhu Ke. At that very moment, Zhu Ke greeted the main character while riding a bicycle. Because of this, the driver immediately got scared because he thought that the phantom was chasing them while they were driving the car. According to the hero, the villain could not catch up with them on a bicycle, and this is generally absurd, and the system warned that you should not try to repeat this style of driving yourself. It could be dangerous for others and the person who does it. The villain decided to use his magical abilities to stop the car, and he lifted it right above the ground. This turn of events greatly shocked the guy, because he did not expect that Zhu Ke would take them by surprise right here. Using magical abilities, the scoundrel threw the car directly onto the asphalt, and thereby crashed it. Now the enemy was glad that Lin Fan was finally alone, and wanted to deal with him back at the university or Zhao's residence. Approaching closer to the car, Zhu Ke decided to ask the guy, "Where is the map of the dragon's territory, or else he will finish him off." Behind him, the main character was about to attack, and he swung his fist to strike. Turning around, the villain did not expect something like this, and was very frightened by this turn of events. The ability was truly impressive as Lin Fan not only used a 5-star boxing skill, but also supernatural strength. Using all his magical potential, the scoundrel was going to defend himself and control the body of the main character. But this defense was rather pointless, since Lin Fan was much stronger than any magician who could resist him. During the impact, the magic shield gradually began to crack and literally fell into small pieces. Out of fear, the enemy immediately began to experience difficulties during defense, because his opponent was really very strong, and this was noticeable literally from the first attack. The car was completely destroyed, but the young man was absolutely fine and his health was restored in a matter of seconds. The driver of the car was also injured, but Lin decided to help him and used the regeneration skill on him. As it turned out, at this moment he had spent 200,000 points on a great healing, which was surprising since it had previously taken much less to spend on something similar. The frightened enemy began to think that he needed to resort to using his true power. The scoundrel tried with all his might to force the guy to give him a map of the dragon's territory, but he said that he would not do it. Zhu Ke only responded to this that the young man would greatly regret his decision. Experiencing strong rage, the guy shouted that the enemy was trying to constantly control him, but this would not happen again. But in fact, at this time the enemy was doing something else, and it was not magical control at all. After all, while the spell was being cast, a giant robot was summoned, which was literally frightening in size. Lin Fan really did not expect that the enemy would resort to such techniques, because he had never seen a robot in his life. Thanks to human dexterity, the guy managed to jump away from the robot, and thereby avoid the attack. At this time, he only thought that his enemy was insanely strong, and if he did not dodge the attack again, he would lose. But in this case, the robot's weakness was obvious, since it was necessary to deprive him of his eyes by breaking his head. Thanks to the strongest attack, it was possible to break the robot's head, and thus it turned out that he was defeated. It turned out that the mask was hiding the person who had been controlling the robot all this time. This turn of events really confused the young man, because he did not expect that the enemy would be human. The enraged scoundrel smiled viciously and was glad to meet Lin Fanon, but the main character couldn't even remember who his opponent was. It turned out that it was the teacher William, whom he had recently defeated in battle. Looking at his enemy, the guy decided to ask him, why call on this teacher, but he is just a mercenary who carried out the order. Teacher William sincerely hated the main character, because he was publicly humiliated, and after which he was completely kicked out of work. Because of this he wanted to take revenge. The Tianhong armor that he was now wearing makes him much stronger. This armor not only made him stronger, but also protected him from the acupuncture technique that the young man had previously used to win. Suddenly, the boy exclaimed that of course he didn't want to upset the teacher, but an acupuncture technique had already been used directly on his forehead, causing William to immediately fall. The enemy was not so simple, and he decided to use a completely different technique to win. Zhu Ke originally intended to remove Master William's armor in order to use it on another person. Watching everything that was happening, the hero could not understand what was happening, because such techniques were used for the first time. Thanks to the enemy's magical abilities, all the armor was transferred to a man named Qinglong from the Tianfeng gang. The second enemy was a girl named White Tiger. She was also a member of the Tianhong gang. Looking at his enemies, the boy could not understand who they were. Zhu Ke decided to explain that these were the people whom he had recently defeated, and also advised Lin Fan to go to the doctor, because perhaps he already had multiple sclerosis. But still, even though these enemies had once been present in the hero's life, he still could not recognize them, because they looked strange. As it turned out, there was a rule in the Tianhong gang that the one who failed the mission was handed over to Jutsu for Taoist experiments. Therefore, thanks to the villain's abilities, these people evolved, and now they looked completely different. The strength of the scoundrels was increased significantly, which gave them a colossal advantage in battle. The man in the metal suit immediately began to attack the main character and used a compression technique. At the same time, another enemy was about to attack from the air and was approaching Lin Fan. Trying to resist the next attack, the hero realized that a little more and he would no longer be able to win this battle. The White Tiger made an attack and threw the knives straight at the young man in order to launch a surprise attack. Thanks to his dexterity, the guy was still able to dodge, but he felt the danger and understood that he would not last long. His enemies were truly dangerous, and they threatened his life more than anyone else. Zhu Ke also decided to reveal that his allies were very bloodthirsty and destructive. If Lin Fan missed an attack even once, it would definitely have critical consequences for him. Even the system kept telling the hero with all its might that it was necessary to run away from here because the enemies were too strong. Looking at his opponents, the boy realized that in this place it was no longer worth hiding from flying knives. The enemies looked terrifying, which made it unknown whether the main character would die here. Using a special jumping technique, the boy was still able to escape from the grip of one of the enemies. By pressing the acupuncture points on his lower back, the young man gradually began to come to his senses. Now his back did not hurt, it was much easier for him to move around the battlefield. The determined guy was ready for battle and wanted to do everything possible to win. The enemy, meanwhile, suffered from the attack that the system made on him during a conversation with the main character. Luckily, he also had a lot of unspent points that he could use right now to upgrade the necessary skills. Realizing the complexity of this situation, the young man nevertheless decided to purchase the spring mushroom in order to eat it and improve his skills. Thus, the time has come to fight back against your enemies thanks to this unusual mushroom. The mushroom literally begged the main character not to eat it, because he still wanted to live a little. Disgusted by the mushroom, the guy understood that it was certainly difficult to go, but this was the only chance for victory. Closing his eyes, Lin Fan tried to eat this disgusting mushroom, but did not understand why it was making some strange sounds. At that very second, the mushroom sensed danger and immediately screamed in fear. Thanks to the mushroom, the hero heard that a knife was flying towards him, which almost wounded him. The enemy immediately approached the guy and decided to act differently, taking the mushroom from him. Thus, the mushroom was in the hands of the White Tiger, and it was completely unclear what she was going to do with it. In an unconscious state, the girl began to bring the mushroom to her mouth, and it seemed that she wanted to eat it. This really had to happen. The girl was going to eat the same mushroom that the main character had previously purchased in the system. Trying to stop his enemy, the guy shouted that she should not eat him, and even the system did not understand how it was possible to eat this vile mushroom just like that. Meanwhile, Zhu Ke watched everything that was happening and did not understand what the White Tiger snatched from the enemy's hands. Some time later, the girl began to make some strange sounds that did not resemble normal speech. The enemy's body began to glow with a bright blue light, and she herself trembled from the effect of the spring mushroom. The young man could not understand what would happen if someone ate a spring mushroom without the support of the system, but even the system did not understand what could happen. After all, this had never happened before. After thinking a little, the guy came to the conclusion that it might be worth using internal energy to force the enemy to return the spring mushroom. The enemy continued to attack, because after the electric shock he was even more angry with the main character. Trying to resist his enemy, Lin Fan realized that his strength was much greater, but fortunately, he was slow. If the enemy had been a little faster, the guy would have died. Using his magical abilities, the young man decided to jump up and strike. But the enemy at that moment tracked his movement and decided to remove him for the last time in order to end this battle. Thanks to his agility, he was still able to jump on his enemy and tried to strike. Zhu Kai at this time, he did everything possible to prevent the attack, and he used magical abilities to do this. This magical ability had the property of a body control technique. Experiencing strong rage, the guy realized that he needed to resist with all his might in order to win the battle. Unfortunately, the enemy was already too close and was about to strike with his leg. Using physical strength, the young man tried to defeat the giant robot and with both hands held back the strongest attack. The enemy behind exclaimed that he was forced to resort to this trick, because now his abilities are good enough to fight with Qianlong, who is equal in strength to D rank. A student who can compete with a D-level expert is something unrealistic, so he is sure that the young man clearly knows where the map of the dragon territory is. According to the main character, his enemy was talking some nonsense, because in fact he didn't even know where this dragon card was. Due to this, the enemy decided to act differently, and exclaimed for Qinglong to use maximum power. Immediately after this, the robot underwent a transformation, with the help of which it began to use turbojet engines. It was even more difficult to resist such a strong attack, and it was incredibly difficult for the guy. Experiencing severe pain while blocking his opponent's attack, the guy began to scream in anger. The enemy noticed this and immediately began to mock the young man, saying that he was going to die. Looking at everything that was happening, Zhu Kai had already said goodbye to his enemy and said that he was very sorry. Suddenly, a plate of incredibly hot noodles fell right on Qinglong's head. These were super delicious hot dumplings that were also hot as hell. Zhu Kai simply could not believe what was happening, because he did not understand where these dumplings could have come from. Thanks to his dexterity, the young man rolled over and was ready to continue the fight with his enemies. The system praised the boy, saying that he was really great because he made a good decision in such a difficult situation. The guy was really happy that he made a decision and reacted in time. During the fight, he managed to spin the tape measure right before the blow, and in general, he was hoping for a new skill. Well, it turned out fine. Because the dumplings were really piping hot, and they had the right effect on the giant robot. Now it was the protagonist's turn to continue the attack, and he immediately ran towards Qinglong to strike. The brave warrior decided to use his boxing skills, which had been upgraded to 5 stars, as well as another skill called supernatural strength. From such blows, the robot's armor immediately began to break and crack at incredible speed. Thus, Zhu Kai realized that Lin Fan was much stronger than an ordinary D-rank enemy. After many strikes, the robot literally began to explode, which forced it to self-destruct. The armor gradually dissipated, and now Qinglong could no longer be as strong as before. Looking at this armor, the main character realized that it was indeed very similar to the one he had seen before. After all, this armor was previously worn by the granddaughter of Elder Zhao. These were gloves designed by the girl. Feeling incomprehensible, the young man wanted to find out where his enemies got these gloves from. Hearing this, the enemy immediately began to laugh and noticed that the guy was really very attentive and noticed everything. The enemy decided to admit that this Qinglong armor and white tiger uniform were the invention of the Zhao group. Lin Fan didn't understand how this happened, and wanted to know how the Zhao family managed to get these developments. At the same time, the enemy was already about to make an attack from the air, and used his magic daggers. The white tiger attacked with a magical blade that flew at incredibly high speed and could hit a target that was several tens of kilometers away. Turning around, the boy realized that he had forgotten about his second enemy, who was threatening his life. Meanwhile, Xiao Mei was walking home, and thought that Lin Fan gave her his word that he could come to her home at any time, and she must be ready, but first, she must ask Dad's permission. The joyful girl entered the house and immediately told her father that today she had won the volleyball championship and asked permission to invite a friend to dinner. The father was not at all happy about his daughter's victory, and he immediately ordered her to shut her mouth. Also, Xiao Mei could not understand why her brothers were standing in this room and looking at someone. A strange man was sitting on the sofa, and he was surrounded by several girls. He immediately noticed that Xiao Mei came home and greeted her. This man had the nickname Unicorn. he was a member of the Tianhong gang and noticed that the Xiao family did not pay debts to his group, for which they had to pay. Laughing, the girl's brother was going to justify her, because he wanted to talk about her victory. The scoundrel did not like this, and he immediately decided to act, hit the young man directly with his face on the floor. This turn of events was shocking for the family, and they began to shout that the unicorn should not touch him, because the guy was not guilty of anything. As it turned out, for many years, the Tianhong gang had protected the Xiao family and done all the dirty work, but the Xiao family had stolen billions of dollars from them, which made them unable to continue their cooperation any longer. Younger brother exclaimed that there is no need to get so excited, because behind the Tianhong gang there is a shadow. In the state of the Xiao family, it is currently protected by him, then it is not clear why to hide all this at all. Because of this, the younger brother decided to take the stranger into a secret room so that he could look at a masterpiece worth $10 billion. After the guy led the man out the door, he immediately closed it. The father of the family could not understand what was happening and why the younger brother did this. At the same time, the unicorn continued to scream to be released, and threatened absolutely everyone that he would bury them alive. At that same second, an incredible roar was heard that scared absolutely everyone. An unknown liquid began to leak from under the door, and it was really very strange. Soon after, the unicorn's head literally crashed through the huge door. The family could not understand what was happening and how the unicorn was defeated, and the youngest son only said that he took the stranger to his room. From now on, the Xiao family will rule the city without the help of the Tianhong family. At the same time, the battle continued and the protagonist dodged a knife that was thrown straight at him. Using magical abilities, the enemy threw many knives at once, which greatly complicated the battle. The evil girl tried with all her might to defeat the young man, and did everything possible to do this. An incredibly huge number of knives were instantly thrown straight at Lin Fan. The frightened guy barely dodged, and understood that just a little more, and he fell into a trap. Immediately the enemy jumped on him and was about to finish the battle he had started. It turned out that the girl actually liked the main character very much, and she considered him incredibly attractive. Even the system could not believe that the enemy was influenced in this way by that vile pestering mushroom. The spring mushroom is an exotic plant. After being eaten by a common man, it causes the human brain to produce various hormones and secretions such as endorphins, dopamines, norepinephrines and other substances. In short, this is an incredibly powerful stimulant that the system, using high technology, can direct to the area of the brain that is responsible for the chosen talent. Without the help of artificial intelligence, this super powerful stimulant causes a hormonal explosion that will result in a thirst for love and an attack of nymphomania. That is why the girl sincerely began to believe that she loved the young man so much that she was even ready to kill him. The alarmed system understood that it was impossible to bring the girl to her senses using any of the possible methods. Trying to resist, Lin Fan shouted that he would never give up, even if he was loved very much. Using physical force, he knocked the knife out of his enemy's hands. After which, the boy exclaimed that he did not like the girl, and he wanted to get rid of her. However, it was not clear how the enemy was still able to block the attacks, because Lin Fan could not calmly move and use his strength. At the same time, Zhu Kei filmed everything on his mobile phone, because he wanted to capture the moment when the main character was fighting with the girl. The scoundrel did not know what the white tiger ate, and why she began to behave this way, but he knew that his opponent wanted to get the granddaughter of Elder Zhao, and if she saw this, then they would never be able to meet again. The alarmed guy immediately assumed that Zhu Kei was somehow connected with Zhao Lingming. Bowing his head, the young man decided to find out from the main character what kind of relationship he had with the elder's granddaughter. As he asked this question, a tear began to flow down his face. Zhao Lingming was not yet the general director of the Zhao group, and Zhu Kei had not yet joined the Tianhong gang. They were both studying at the Wushu department of Shenzhou University. At that time, Zhu Kei was an elegant and kind young man, and also the most successful in learning martial arts among his comrades. This young man loved to look after his students very much, but the teacher decided to ask the girl why she didn't want to meet with Zhu Kei. The embarrassed lady said that it was not that this guy was unpleasant to her, but most likely he had some oddities. Initially, these oddities were visible during the battle that took place in the competition. The guy really had an unimaginable talent, because he could restrain enemies with the power of thought and lift them into the air. These skills were indeed extremely rare because they provided an extraordinary advantage during battle. Thanks to his skills and magical abilities, Zhu Ke could destroy literally any enemy. This year, Zhu Ke won again. His strength was equal to rank E, and apparently it was he who hit on Zhao Lingming at that moment, which is why everyone thought that he was quite good. At that time, Zhu Ke was an elegant and kind young man, and also the most successful in learning martial arts among his comrades. But he was just a little thick, which made Zhao Lingming very embarrassed. Because of this guy, Lady was just shaking because she was disgusted by him because of his excess weight. Some time later, something happened that no one expected, and the teacher caught Zhu Ke red-handed in the act of committing a crime. Magical abilities were used directly on the villain during the crime he was committing. Suddenly, it turned out that this guy was stealing underwear, but fortunately, their teacher caught him, but it seems that at that moment he stole Zhao Lingming's underwear, and it was terrible. As it turned out later, Zhu Ke was expelled for stealing underwear at the university. Having gone from proud students to obscene criminals who were shouted at and beaten every night, Zhu Ke cried, became deeply saddened, and decided to change. He lost weight, stayed in shape and changed his name. When Zhu Ke reappeared at Shenzhou University, he finally turned into the most handsome guy on the entire street, intending to pursue Zhao Lingming with dignity. But unexpectedly, he heard bad news, because the student's medical examination showed that Zhu Ke and the elder's granddaughter were related. Unfortunately, the elder found out about this, and now did not want Zhu Ke to be Zhao Lingming's boyfriend. Thus, the young man realized that love was impossible for them, due to the fact that they were relatives for 3 generations. And Mr. Zhao turned out to be Zhu Qiue's uncle, which made him depressed. But when this guy was desperate, he met the head of the Tianhong group and joined him. That is why when Lin Fan asked Zhu Ke, what is his relationship with Zhao Lingming, the villain could only answer that Zhao Lingming was the girl he couldn't get. Meanwhile, the fight continued, and the girl attacked the main character again. Thanks to her magical hand, she could easily make an incredibly strong blow right in the guy's face. The malicious Zhu Ke apologized to the young man at the last moment and said that it was too late and the fight must be ended. Suddenly, the hero exclaimed that no wonder Zhu Ke followed him everywhere, because his goal is not a map of the dragon's territory, but he just wants to kill him. The Wulian acupuncture point specialized in treating the insane, thanks to which it was possible to pacify the enemy. The worried guy realized that Qinglong and Bai Hu were easily defeated. Now he understood why Elder Zhao appointed him as his son-in-law. In addition to the lack of blood relations, the most important thing is, guys, that the elder likes his skills, and he also has a map of the dragon's territory. That is why the enemy believed that if the guy had obeyed him from the very beginning and could provide the card, he would have been able to return to the organization without resentment, but he no longer cared. And due to the fact that the enemy does not want to say where is the dragon territory map, Zhu Ke will be forced to kill him. Thanks to his magical abilities, the scoundrel was easily able to disassemble the bicycle and used its wheels as a weapon. This weapon was truly dangerous because the bicycle wheels flew at incredible speeds like meteorites. Even the scoundrel's partner was hit, although he did not expect it. The frightened man received Zhu Qiue's strongest attack, which is why he was unable to continue the fight. Watching everything that was happening, the main character realized that Zhu Ke was really serious. Fortunately, the boy had incredible agility, which is why he was able to dodge such a strong attack. To Lin Fan's surprise, the enemy was easily able to break the armor, which was quite strong. Nevertheless, the battle continued, and the young man did everything possible to resist such a strong enemy. Angry at the enemy, the guy began to understand that such a nonentity as he had to die. All this time, attacks continued to be directed at Lin Fan, but he dodged them with all his might. Experiencing severe stress, the young man shouted to the system to make at least some kind of exchange. Thanks to the exchange carried out by the system, the guy ended up with a kind of cane in his hands, with which he was able to defend himself. Using a cane, he easily counterattacked, causing the bicycle wheels to fly in the other direction. These wheels headed straight towards Jutsu, and it seemed that in this way he received a blow from his own weapon. The young man constantly watched the enemy, and thought that in fact he intended to kill even his own partner. Ranged attacks with high speed and strength, the trajectory of his attacks also made no sense at all. Because of which, it was obvious that this dirty little guy with glasses was really very strong. Unexpectedly, the enemy decided to ask the hero where he got this stick in his hands. The smart guy immediately began to make excuses and exclaimed that he simply had a magic bag. Using magic, Zhuge shouted that if his enemy did not confess, he would die anyway, after which several more serious attacks followed, and it seemed that Lin Fan was injured. A serious enemy sincerely wanted to turn the main character into ashes. Looking at the place where the blow was made, the villain was simply shocked, because he did not see his victim there. At the same second, an attack from Lin Fan followed, which made Zhuge even more surprised by what was happening. The unexpected attack was so strong that it literally caused the villain to lose his balance. Another attack was also used, but the blow was made to the back so that the enemy could no longer fight. While Zhuge was in severe pain after the blow, all he could think about was that he hated Lin Fan. The smart young man used a hidden technique, thanks to which he was almost invisible to the enemy. This technique easily allowed you to attack any of the criminals without punishment, since he didn't even see you. This item had a second level, and it was called invisibility clothing. Having taken on several attacks, Zhuge again began to prepare for the attack, and gradually rose to his feet. Crossing his arms, the bastard exclaimed that Lin Fan forced him to use a forbidden technique.